Hey guys, welcome back to the channel. This is a story about what if Deku had Shimura quirk part 1. If you guys enjoy this what if and want to see part 2, comment down below and let me know before I start. Please do support for more awesome content and leave a like, and don't forget to subscribe to my channel and also share this video with your friends and check out the description in my playlist. The author of the story lucarioacero from WhatIf. So let's start the video. 𝗵𝘃𝗧𝗵𝗃, Japan, 2411. Yagi household. Sitting in the attic of the house of a very famous family was Izuku Yagi. Izuku was 10 years old and had dark green hair and emerald green eyes. He had a cute and chubby face with freckles in the shape of diamonds on both cheeks. He wore a plain white shirt and black shorts with red shoes. Noticeably though, the 10-year-old had quite a few scars and burn marks all along his skin and patches of dark purple and rashes. You may be wondering why a 10-year-old boy has so many injuries. In order to answer that, you'd have to see the boy's past. Years ago, he and his sister, 𝗧𝗵𝗲, who had green hair like him but with green eyes, both went to the doctor's office to find out their quirk. Quirks have been around for roughly 250 years, and they all began with a baby that was born glowing in Qingqing City in China. In just 2 years, roughly 15% of the population of the world had what was called a quirk. This caused the entire world to be plunged into an age of darkness and chaos. And in that chaos arose a new profession, heroism. Every kid wanted to be a hero, and that included Izuku and 𝗧𝗵𝗲. When they arrived at the doctor's office, they waited patiently for their quirks to be revealed. 𝗧𝗵𝗲 was shown to have a very nice psychokinesis quirk that, if trained, could be very useful as a hero. Izuku, on the other hand, was quirkless. And ever since that day, his parents have begun to slowly forget about him. It first started with 𝗧𝗵𝗲 getting to choose dinner of the show, then they forgot about his meals, and then they forgot the fact that HR needed to be driven to school. Now, his parents don't even remember him even in the slightest. Just yesterday, his mother heard from another mother about her son and she replied with, "I've always wanted a son." His sister did remember him though, but only because he still wished to be a hero. When he and his sister were 3, they both promised each other with their group of friends that they'd all become heroes together. Izuku still wanted to be a hero though, even though he was quirkless, which caused 𝗧𝗵𝗲 for some reason to turn him into a test dummy for her quirk to make him say he won't become a hero. Soon enough, all of his friends, which included Shoka Todoroki, who was always his crush, Shoto Todoroki, who he thought was his friend, Katsuki Bakugou, who he always called Kacchan, and Katsumi Bakugou, who he always called Kacchan, all turned on him. Everyone at school either hated or bullied him, and he didn't have a single friend in the entire world. This caused him to completely shut off from the world. He began writing journals on how to become a hero by analyzing heroes and everything about them, from their quirks, to their training, to even their applications of their quirk. Izuku worked out too. He did lots of push-ups, lots of sit-ups, lots of running and endurance training, and even lifted weights whenever he could. He developed a personality that just focused on himself and his goal. Unfortunately, even after he said to his sister and his former friends that he wouldn't become a hero, and that he'd given up, they still used their quirks on him and didn't stop bullying him. Then it just got even worse. Yesterday, after an hour of nothing but being beat up by his former friends, he began wobbling home. He snuck into the basement, which was the room he was given after he was kicked out of his original room by his sister. He got into the basement and began trying to patch up his wounds when he started getting hungry. So he tried to sneak up the staircase to the kitchen to try and make some food to eat. When he arrived to the kitchen, however, his father and mother were there in the living room talking with his sister and former friends, so Izuku decided to eavesdrop. 𝗧𝗵𝗲, Katsuki, Katsumi, Shoto, Shoka, there is something I need to tell all of you. His father, Toshinori Yagi, said. He was tall, almost 6 feet 10 inches, with blonde hair that hung down the sides of his face, with thick blonde eyebrows and piercing blue eyes. He wore a black business suit with black shoes. Picture him with the body above and the hairstyle and clothes below. "What is it, uncle?" Katsuki asked with a smirk. "I've been keeping something from all of you. You see, I'm actually a hero. But not just any hero, you see I am." His father said as he stood up and put the bangs of hair by the sides of his face upward and took off his suit to reveal a superhero costume that everyone knew. Now it's just the picture above. I am the hero of peace, all might. He yelled with enthusiasm as Izuku and his former friends all gasped in shock. You see, your father has a lot of enemies, so we knew that we'd have to tell you the truth about him when you all were responsible enough to keep it a secret. Otherwise, you'd all say that you were close to heroes and become targets. Izumi, your dad isn't the only hero in the family. Izuku and Izumi's mother, 𝗵𝗃𝗧𝗏, said. She had dark green hair and emerald green eyes, and she wore a simple housewife outfit. But then she got out of her outfit and revealed a hero suit. Before, after, I am the psychic hero, Green Tornado. And we also have one more secret to give you, Izumi. 𝗵𝗃𝗧𝗏 said as Izuku cried at the fact that his parents were the heroes that inspired him to become a hero in the first place. His mother was number 4 in the current polls, and his father was the current number 1 hero. He couldn't believe it. But what was this secret? You see, Izumi, my quirk is a lot different from any other quirk in the world. My quirk is one for all, and it was passed on to me by your grandmother, Nana Shimura. You see, I am the 8th user of this great power, and I wish you to become my successor and become the 9th user of One for All. You see, I was originally quirkless, but your grandmother chose me to hold OFA and become her successor in order to fight evil. Because of your quirk, and your qualities that make you a hero, I wish for you to take One for All. All Might explained while Izuku's heart broke beyond compare. His father was quirkless, just like him, so why did he neglect him? He must have felt the exact same pain as him, so why does he ignore him? Did Izuku do something wrong? Was it him? He wanted to be a hero too. Why couldn't he choose him to be his successor? He wanted nothing more than to be a hero and help people. Wasn't that enough? Hey, why not give it to your son instead though? Shoto asked with confusion. You and Katsuki already have incredible quirks. You both will be able to become top heroes without OFA. All Might answered as Izuku's heart broke even more. I accept, Dad. I'll become the strongest hero in the world. Izumi shouted as Izuku's hope shattered even further. After that, everything became a blur. He remembered going to the basement to sleep, but honestly, he couldn't sleep. His own father, who was supposed to help his children accomplish their dreams no matter what, favored his daughter simply because she was born with a quirk. He knew exactly the pain that Izuku went through, yet he did absolutely nothing to help him. Not only that, that was the least concerning thing. He didn't even consider him as his son, he instead considered the very same people that bullied, abused, and beat him as his sons. After he woke up from his restless night, he noticed that his sister was at school and his parents were probably busy with work. So, Izuku did the only thing he could think of. Run away. He couldn't stand being in a place that had the power to help him, but didn't. He couldn't stand being in a place where his very own flesh and blood had forgot about him. He didn't consider any of them family now, not his sister, not his mother, nor his father. Izuku needed to escape from this hellhole. So, he had to get certain things ready in order to escape. He packed a bag with a week's worth of food, water, and packed 5 pairs of clothes. He went to the attic so he could get some flashlights to keep moving in the nighttime, until he stumbled across something, which brings us to now. Izuku was in the attic looking at a picture that he had never seen before. In it was his mother, and a man whom he had not once seen. He had black hair with the freckles he had in the same place, he wore a business suit and had red eyes. Izuku suddenly felt it all click. Toshinori wasn't his blood father, he was his stepfather. That's why he neglected him. He wasn't his actual son. Izuku got angry and picked up the picture before he threw it at a shelf that held many books and caused one to fall out. It was labeled Diary of Heihachi Midoriya. Izuku opened it and saw that the first page held a secret page, so he peeled it off and saw the actual hidden page. On it he read the page. My name is Hisashi Shigaraki. I am All for One, a former villain that can take and give quirks. This journal is to keep record of my memories in case my memories get stolen or lost. My quirk is All for One, where I can take, use, and give an unlimited number of quirks. I used to a villain during the dawn of quirks, 230 years ago to just 3 years ago. My brother whom I thought was quirkless actually had a transferable quirk, so when I gave him an emitter quirk that could store energy, It gave 𝗵𝗃𝗃𝗃 to the opposite of my quirk, 𝗃𝗏𝗏. After fighting against and killing the past 7 users of 𝗃𝗏𝗏, I have decided that I should try to be a normal civilian. Society is starting to grow into my image and is starting to accept quirks fully and welcome even mutant quirks. I have just married the only girl whom I've ever loved, 𝗵𝗃𝗃 Shimura, who is actually the daughter of Nana Shimura, who was the previous user of 𝗃𝗏𝗃. But I didn't care. Anyway, I've been married to her for 2 years, and I can sense that I've gotten her 𝗵𝗃𝗃𝗃 with my child. It is a boy from what I can tell. Unfortunately, the 8th user of 𝗃𝗏𝗃, 𝗵𝗃, is apparently good friends with 𝗵𝗃𝗃. So, I've decided that I need to abandon her and my child. The only regret that I have in my life is that I didn't get to be there for my son and wife. I hope both of them can be happy, but if I kill 𝗵𝗃, then 𝗵𝗃𝗃 will never forgive me, and both her and my child will be condemned to a life of misery and will likely be held responsible for my crimes. If my son is reading this, then know this: I only left you so I could give you a better life. If you choose to become a hero, then I'll trust you to bring me to justice. Know that I leave everything to you. By the end of the page, Izuku was crying in sadness. This was why he couldn't have a happy life. Because his father was a villain. He couldn't stand it at all. All he wanted was to become a hero and save people, and he couldn't even do that all because of the actions of people who didn't even play a part in his life. It's not fair at all. After snapping out of his thoughts when he heard the front door of the house open, Izuku brought his backpack and himself all the way down to the basement. He'd leave after he ate breakfast. So he snuck into the pantry and snuck in his pocket some snacks and some packets of dry cereal to eat. He walked out of the pantry into the kitchen and saw his 𝗵𝗃𝗃 staring at him. Excuse me, kid, but do I know you? And what are you doing in my house? 𝗵𝗃 asked, which now brought nothing but anger to Izuku's mind. No, you don't, I'll just leave. Sorry. Izuku said as he brushed shoulders with 𝗵𝗃 and walked out the front door, leaving a confused 𝗵𝗃. Unknowingly to 𝗵𝗃 though, Izuku had awakened his quirk for the first time ever, one far more powerful than 𝗃𝗏𝗃 or 𝗃𝗏𝗃. Izuku walked around the house and back into the basement to get ready. He ate the snacks to give himself some energy before he picked up his backpack and exited the house, for the very last time. Izuku then took off sprinting down the street and into an alleyway to get away from as many people as possible. He just didn't stop running, so much so that he began to tire down, but he just didn't want to stop. Suddenly, something in Izuku's body clicked and green lightning circled through his body as he began to run even faster and even not tire at all. He stopped as quick as he could and focused on his now awakened power. Is this my quirk? Izuku asked as he slowly started to lose consciousness and felt himself seemingly pulled into his mind. Inside 𝗃𝗏𝗃, Izuku slowly started to open his eyes, or at least, he thought so, and was met with something he didn't expect. An infinitely expanding dark starry sky, with moving stars of all colors. There, in front of though, were 7 figured. Ignore 𝗵𝗃's flame. Hello there, my grandbaby. The woman with black hair and black eyes in front of him said with a smile and crying tears. Izuku stared at her and the other people before becoming very confused and very scared. You're Nana Shimura. But wait a second, my father killed you. Did I die too? He said as he slowly started panicking. No, you didn't die. I'm Yoichi Shigaraki, your uncle and the first user of 𝗃𝗏𝗃. We are the past users of 𝗃𝗏𝗃. We've been watching you intently, and we deem you the true successor and inheritor of 𝗃𝗏𝗃. Izuku's now known uncle, Yoichi said, who had white hair and green eyes and a kind smile. But doesn't 𝗃𝗏𝗃 need the current user to choose who takes it? Izuku asked, how slowly being filled with hope. No, it takes all previous users of 𝗃𝗏𝗃 to choose a successor. You see, 𝗃𝗏𝗃 evolved when your uncle took it. Instead of storing just energy, it can now store souls and spirits, along with quirks. Because of this, every user of 𝗃𝗏𝗃 has all been deemed worthy of holding 𝗃𝗏𝗃. The only problem though, is that your 𝗵𝗃𝗃𝗃 of a stepfather has had 𝗃𝗏𝗃 for 30 years, and when he gained 𝗃𝗏𝗃, we all approved of him. Unfortunately, by the time that he began neglecting you, it was too late to take it away from him. My name is 𝗳𝗏𝗃𝗃. I'm the 5th user of 𝗃𝗏𝗃. A man who was tall and bald with dull blue eyes elaborated to Izuku. We as the holders of 𝗳𝗧𝗍 do not see 𝗧𝗵𝗲 𝗧𝗔𝗂𝘁 as fit to become the next wielder of 𝗳𝗧𝗍. She is far too arrogant and self-serving. Not to mention, she behaves like a villain when she bullied you. I'm 𝗵𝗃, the 6th user of 𝗳𝗧𝗍 by the way. A man with short black hair with black narrow eyes said. Izuku, you are the only worthy successor of 𝗳𝗧𝗍, we all agree. Even with your past, you still wish deep in your core to just try and help people. Because of that, we urge you to become the next wielder of 𝗳𝗧𝗍. I am 𝗵𝗃𝗲, the 2nd wielder of 𝗳𝗧𝗍. A girl with black hair and red eyes said. Because of your now awakened quirk, along with 𝗳𝗧𝗍, and all of our quirks, we can entrust you to become a hero and save people in our stead. I am 𝗵𝗃𝗲, the 3rd wielder of 𝗳𝗧𝗍, and yes, you did just awaken your true quirk, when you brushed shoulders with your 𝗵𝗃𝗲𝗍 of a stepfather. A man with purple hair and yellow eyes said. You see, since 𝗳𝗧𝗍 has evolved since going into you, you will be able to access and use all of our quirks to the max. Additionally, we can all lend you advice, training, and our skills at any time in order to help you and make you truly strong. You will learn a lot from all of us, and you can accomplish your dream of becoming a hero. So do you accept? Oh, I'm 𝗳𝗃𝗁𝗃, the 4th user of 𝗳𝗧𝗍. A man with white hair and orange eyes said. He also had 2 scars that stretched across the left side of his face, going from his forehead to past his lips. Wait a second, Mikatsu, you said that I had an original quirk. What do you mean by that? Do I have another quirk aside from 𝗳𝗧𝗍? Izuku asked in shock and confusion. Izuku, you do have a quirk, the one that you were born with. Apparently, it was laying dormant inside of you waiting for a strong emotion to summon it by force. One thing we can all thank that 𝗵𝗃𝗲𝗍 used to call son for, is that because of him not recognizing you as his son, along with crushing your dream, the emotions you experienced because of it awakened your true quirk, one that is more powerful than 𝗳𝗧𝗍 and 𝗂𝗧𝗍. Nana explained. Wait, what is my quirk then? And exactly how powerful is it? Izuku asked in shock. Your quirk is called All for All, and with it, you can take, use, give, disable, combine, evolve, destroy, and copy quirks. With this quirk and all of ours plus 1 for all, you can become a hero. His uncle told him with a smile as Izuku kneeled on the ground and started breaking down in a fit of tears and sobs. He could become a hero, but not just any hero, the strongest hero ever. In 𝗳𝗧𝗍's mindscape same day as last chapter, so then, where do you all think I should run away to? I mostly just ran away to get out of that house. At that moment I gave up on being a hero though, and if you all are going to help me, then I need a place to go to in order to train and live. Do you guys have any ideas on where I should go? Izuku asked while sitting down in front of all the users of 𝗳𝗧𝗍. The only place that I can recommend would be America. There are plenty of places that you could use to practice your quirks without being caught or spied on. In my vacation to Tennessee, I did build a small forest house there. And there is plenty of space and equipment that can be used to train you well. Sure, you may have to clean it up a bit, since it hasn't been used in roughly 15 years, but it should suit you for a while. Nana Shimura said as she remembered her vacation home she built when she was in Tennessee. Yeah, but we should also make plans on trying to keep him educated. Right now you are at grade 5, but you've studied material up to grade 8, so for right now, apply for a high school and get as high of a score as you can. Try and speed through the top classes of high school as fast as you can possibly do so online. Once you do that, apply for as many scholarships as you possibly can to get as much of a free tuition as possible. En told Izuku while remembering to try and get Izuku an education. Not only that though, Izuku obviously will eventually have to buy another property. Eventually, someone will find where he lives and that property could be bought since he would technically be occupying it and squatting in it. Although I am against it, he might need to create a new identity as a businessman and have to buy properties. Not only that, but Izuku will have to find a quirk that can change appearances, which will be hard. 𝗳𝗃𝗁𝗃 stated. I heard that America is #1 in quirk diversity, so I should be able to find a quirk like that or similar, then I could just evolve it and get it to my needs. Additionally, I should probably learn how to make things like furniture, chairs, gardens, etc., So can any of you help me with that? Izuku asked. Before I was a hero, I ran my father's store. We fixed and made a lot of things, from furniture to walls, ceilings, tiles, roofs, silverware, glass, and even mechanical parts. I'll teach you all that I know and then some. 𝗵𝗃𝗧𝗏 offered to him while Izuku nodded in thanks. I grew a lot of things in my garden, and I know how to do all types of agricultural projects, so I'll teach you it. 𝗳𝗏𝗍𝗪 said. We should also discuss the obvious. How are we going to get to America? Yuchi asked as he wanted Izuku to leave this hellhole as fast as possible. Easy, we catch a ride on a shipment boat. With our skills and Izuku being sneaky, we should be able to sneak aboard a shipment container and easily make our way to America. Then we take some food and water and survive off of that. Mikatsu Anemoru offered. Actually, it would be better to hide out in an airplane instead. The security around luggage is actually very low nowadays. He should be able to sneak right in before being able to sneak right out. Nana said as Izuku agreed with her about that. So Izuku decided that he needed to make it to the airport and find a flight towards America. Izuku then focused on exiting OFA's mindscape before he felt his consciousness return to normal. Izuku woke up in an alleyway with everything still on him. Grinning at the fact that he had a quirk now, Izuku activated OFA before he sped off. He tried activating the previous user's quirks and managed to figure out how to evolve quirks. He had to focus with all for all on the quirk in question before feeding it power to grow and expand. Izuku evolved OFA and managed to make the energy multiply every day and store an infinite amount of energy while increasing how he could control it. He could use it power up his body's senses, his reaction time, and even power up other quirks. He did the exact same with the previous user's quirks and managed to activate each of them. Danger Sense allowed him to sense any threat to his life or other people's lives in a 2-mile radius. Black WHP was controlled by his thoughts and were stronger, and he could summon a lot more than 𝗳𝗏𝗧𝗏. Float became fly because he could fly, levitate, and float in any position, though he wondered how fast he could truly fly. Smokescreen now covered his presence, like his sound, smell, sight, obviously, and vibrations. All tongue evolved to now be able to understand and communicate with animals as well, and FA Gene became able to store more energy and be used to power up his quirks beyond their normal limit. Izuku loved the quirks and thanked the previous users adamantly. He used Fly and Smokescreen to fly into the sky and appear as a cloud before he found the airport. After flying down safely in an alleyway, Izuku decided that he needed to find his way to the cargo hold. He found a flight that was headed to North Carolina, so he found his way to that exact airplane. Izuku went into the cargo loading section and managed to sneak his way past all the workers and into the luggage hold. He put himself in between some luggage and just hoped that he could get to Carolina without any problems. After he stayed sitting for a while, he felt the plane begin to move, and soon he felt that the plane had taken off. Deciding to kill time, Izuku decided to train with his new quirks. Izuku practiced with OFA, Black WHP, and FA Gene. Fly and Smokescreen couldn't be practiced in an enclosed space unless he was trying to levitate or float, but Smokescreen could cause attention to be on him, and All Tongue didn't need any training at all. Izuku practiced summoning bands stretching as many energy tendrils as he possibly could. He managed to summon 15 and stretch them around 15 feet. Izuku practiced OFA and learned from the past users how to use it. So Izuku spread OFA all throughout his body and checked his percentage, which was 3%. Izuku smiled before he used FA Gene to amplify it to its max, and managed to equal what the past users called 15%. After he trained his quirks for a full 2 hours, he took a lunch break and ate some food to regain stamina and energy. Izuku then did a physical workout while the past users all instructed him on the different exercises he had to do. Izuku completed the workout while only slightly exhausted. Izuku managed to impress the past users, which made him smile in happiness. For the first time in 6 years, he had people who he could call friends. After more training and practice, Izuku got tired and finally fell asleep from fatigue. About 8 hours of sleep, Izuku finally woke up with a startle as he noticed that the plane seemed to be landing. Quickly putting all the luggage back to what it was before, Izuku hid again. After he felt the plane land, Izuku waited in anticipation with bated breath on how to avoid the workers. Izuku finally heard the luggage door open after 30 minutes. He quickly ran past the workers after they all turned their backs. When he did that, he managed to run past all the other distracted workers and made his way to the main airport lobby. Okay then, now all I need to do is make it to Tennessee. I should be able to fly there with just my quirk alone though. If not, I can always just take stops. Izuku said as the past users of OFA all agreed with him. Izuku got into an alleyway before he activated Fly, OFA, and FA Gene before he used all three to fly off as fast as he possibly could, which was about 40 miles per hour. After stopping a few times and resting a bit, by around 7 a.m., he was in Tennessee. Okay, now I just need to find your vacation house. Grandma, do you know where to go? Izuku asked as he started to eat breakfast to refuel some energy, as using all three quirks for a while did drain him. Yes, go to the Smoky Mountains and go to the tallest mountain, then go down the hill without a clear dirt path, and if you walk for a few 30 minutes, or fly for around 10, then you should find it. Nana said as Izuku followed her advice before flying to the Smoky Mountains and arriving at the tallest one. He found the dirt path and decided to walk instead of fly as he could miss it if he did. After following Nana's instructions, he finally found it. It was a small house with a patio, a working grill that ran on wood, a working AC that ran on a few solar panels, a lot of lights that were also connected. It had 2 beds, a fridge that was too old and needed to be replaced, a semi-working shower, as he needed to clean the pipes, and finally a good roof, though there was a small leak that he could fix. Without the guitar sign and imagined solar panels on the roof. A few 20 feet away from the house was soil perfect for gardening, and to the right of that was a clear open space perfect for training. Under one of the trees was a slightly rusty set of benches for squatting and bench pressing. To the right of that there was also a nice and easy punching dummy. Izuku got to work, and with directions from Daigoro, he managed to easily make a nice amount of land to use for farming. He also took advice from Hinagura about fixing the roof, so Izuku took a bunch of grass and with a lot of time and tedious effort, managed to make a good fix for the roof that was at least waterproof. And also reminded him that he needed to get internet and a computer in order to get an education, and was reminded by 𝗳𝗄𝗃 to get a disguise quirk. Izuku sighed at all the problems before nodding to himself. After he heard of a town near the Smoky Mountains, Nana said it was 𝗵𝗃, Izuku took off to there to find a computer and Wi-Fi device. After remembering exactly where the house was, Izuku took off with flight to go to 𝗵𝗃. He flew through the trees and managed to land without getting spotted. He saw a few heroes patrolling around trying to run patrols, so Izuku needed to look as least suspicious as possible. Izuku first went to an electronics store and saw the prices on the computers. All of them were above $150 and he didn't have that money. He also looked for a Wi-Fi router and saw that they were around $130. Sighing, Izuku thought to himself about how he could get money fast enough. He thought about working, but no store in here would hire him without trying to find his background until he had a disguising quirk. Walking away from the store, he looked out and saw a few teenagers inside of an alleyway right next to the store talking. So, Izuku snuck up and tried to eavesdrop on them. So, you managed to sneak out a couple computers, right? I ain't paying for that type of stuff, my dad would kill me. One teen asked. With my quirk, it was no problem. The only problem was getting the clothes for the employee. My disguise quirk is perfect for this. One teen answered. With his mind made up, Izuku got a smirk before he gained an innocent look on his face before he walked into the alleyway while making the teens look at him. Excuse me, could any of you tell me where to get to the national park? I tried asking other people but they all didn't pay attention to me. Izuku asked while stuttering. The teens flinched at first but calmed down when they saw he didn't hear them. Sure kid here, let me take you there. The teen with the disguise quirk said as he took Izuku's hand and led him to the street and gave him directions. After they parted ways, Izuku smirked and smiled in amazement. He managed to copy the quirk and evolve it. Quickly going to a restroom, Izuku tried to use it and managed to learn about his new quirk. He could change his body fully and imitate mutants and transformation-type quirks, though he wouldn't have any of their properties though, he'd just look like them. Izuku also learned that strangely enough, he could create clothes with it, which did help him greatly, as it meant he wouldn't have to shop for clothes. He named it Appearance Change. Izuku smiled before he thought back to how he could make money when it hit him. He'd have to make money by pretending to be someone else. Quickly consulting with the past users of OFA, he came up with a plan on how to create a new identity. From the users, they all suggested that he go to the 𝗵𝗃𝗃 town hall and create a new identity. Izuku thanked them before he put to work with creating his new persona. Izuku thought to himself on how he should make his persona, and decided to base it off of his father but with orange hair and purple eyes, as he needed there to be as little of a connection between his persona and him as possible. He decided to use the name 𝗳𝗵𝗃𝗃𝗃. Quickly going to the town hall, he managed to disguise himself as a guard and snuck in before find the main office. There he could actually create 𝗳𝗵𝗃𝗃𝗃. After searching for 20 minutes, he managed to find the main office and saw that luckily there weren't any guards there. Izuku went inside and filled in all the required information. He said that 𝗳𝗵𝗃𝗃𝗃 was born in Tokyo, Japan and moved to South Carolina when he was 13. Then, he moved to Tennessee when he was 24 years old. He also filled out the right credit information and made a social security number, and created a phone number. After all of that was settled, now he just needed to get a loan from a bank, buy the computer and router, make a business, pay back the loan, and get an education. Making his way out of the town hall, Izuku managed to make his way back to the forest house and decided to start the garden first. He found some fruits that were natural in the mountain and brought them to the house and ate some of them before he planted the seeds to grow them. By the time he got finished, he noticed that he never really got around to fixing the house. He first disguised himself in his 𝗳𝗵𝗃𝗃𝗃 persona and went to the bank before he took out a loan of $10,000. Izuku needed to start a store and then advertise it. He found an open lot in a clean part of Tennessee and bought it from the number assigned to it for $500. After he bought it, he decided that he needed to sell products, so he went back to the same electronics store he was at before and asked an employee for the number of the owner. After he called the owner, he truly handled himself like a businessman and bought the store for $3,000. So all he had to do was set up a working store system to pay his now employees and he'll be fine. He decided that the first step would be to add another addition to the store, like a fixing station where employees could fix non-working products. Izuku explained this idea to his now employees and managed to create one and instructed the employees on how to fix basic problems. He also bought a router and computer before he left the store to keep for itself. After he made a second trip to his house, he managed to hook up the Wi-Fi and connect fairly enough and set up his computer. Thinking it was enough, he finally passed out after a long day. This chapter really just explains everything that happens to Izuku till he's 16, since I need to go through just how much he's trained and how much he's worked. I'll also include details on his training, business, and hobbies. Tennessee, Smoky Mountains, 7:30 a.m., 24/17. Outside the forest house training in the practice field was the now named Izuku Shimura. Izuku now stood at the height of 5 feet 10 inches and still had that fluffy black and green hair with emerald green eyes. His body had highly condensed and pronounced muscles all along his back, forearms, shoulders, torso, legs, and even had a six-pack, though all of that was needed in order to gain control over OFA, as a conditioned body is needed to use it without damage. He also grew a lot more handsome, or at least, that is what his grandma and Hinagra told him. His face had a sharp jawline, no facial hair, as he shaved often, and little to no fat on his face. That coupled with his freckles and jawline made Izuku considered to be handsome. He wore a black and white butler suit as he was working out. You may ask why, and that is simple. Izuku likes the butler outfit because it is both fancy and comfy, and he made it breathable and workable too. Though he does have dozens of other clothes to pick from, he mostly uses this one most of the time. During his time in Tennessee, Izuku has many skills. He completely fixed up the house he was living in, with it now having a working fridge, internet, roof, more solar panels, and fixed piping. Izuku also crafted a lot of custom-built furniture with chairs, benches, bed frames, couches, stools, and other home furnishings. Izuku also made quite a lot of farm space. He grew tomatoes, potatoes, cabbage, radishes, carrots, pears, peaches, apples, and oranges. Izuku had also hunted a lot of the animals of this mountain and has learned how to track footprints of almost any normal animal, and has had a very nutrient-rich diet. He also learned how to cook exceptionally well with all types of seasonings, flavors, oils, and has memorized 140 recipes. As 𝗳𝗪𝗃𝗵𝗃𝗲, he managed to create a large network of businesses around America. It first started out as controlling and buying some stores from Apple and Samsung, then he went from selling items to fixing and selling better items with better quality. Then he funded hospitals, research centers, factories, and transportation. He made a multi-billion-dollar business network. As such, he was quite rich. Though unlike most companies, Izuku also paid each of his lower working employees a fair wage of $13 per hour as a bare minimum and gave them fair leave time, appropriate sick days, appropriate morning leave, holiday bonuses, and other such bonuses. He also made it a top goal to report overworking and personally paid for their medication if they so needed it with discounts. As such, he was highly respected and has been known to be one of the biggest company tycoons in the world. He has over 2 million workers under him and he pays them all exceptionally well. Izuku also managed to branch out upon other businesses like technology production, to energy production, to waste removal, to hospitals, to dentistry, to even transportation companies. He also branched out to other countries like Russia, Japan, Canada, and Mexico and started and funded business in order to make as much of a global economic system that he could. He's improved companies in every major cornerstone of the world. Izuku also got an incredibly well-off education. He had a PhD in quirkology, electrical engineering, aerospace engineering, software and hardware engineering, physics, mathematics, biochemistry, chemistry, biology, chemical engineering, computer science, biomedical engineering, and economics, all when he was 16. He graduated high school when he was 12, graduated college when he was 14, and finished grad school at 16. He was also completely debt-free, as he got a lot of scholarships all in just 4 years and got all the money that he needed. Izuku also used these PhDs to personally help his technological businesses and to better develop them and their research. He also managed to hire himself under 𝗳𝗪𝗃𝗵𝗃𝗲, and once he actually turned 20, he would have 𝗳𝗪𝗃𝗃𝗃𝗃 die in a helicopter crash and he'd write himself to inherit his companies. One thing he did as Izuku Shimura was become a martial arts champion in America, with 3 tours under his 24 black belts. He 24 martial arts styles ranging from karate, kung fu, judo, taekwondo, and even pressure points. He used all these styles to secure his place as the martial arts champion in America 2 years in a row and then some. He is also using a lot of weapons. He learned from ex-Marines, ex-military, swordsmen, knights, and even monks on how to use a lot of weapons. Mostly he uses swords, knives, gauntlets, brass knuckles, and guns, though he mostly uses pistols. Izuku also has been training his body and quirks extensively. While he was in America, he gained a multitude of quirks, though you may ask how he got them. Some of them he got from civilians, others from pro-heroes, and others he got from thugs and villains that he beat up. Yes, Izuku did become a vigilante in America, and quite a famous one at that. He used appearance change to create another identity, which was known as the Disaster. The reason why was because he used all of his quirks in such a way that most people when they arrive at the crime scene think that multiple natural disasters blew through. His quirks were Divine Flame. Izuku copied several flame quirks and evolved them before combining them into one quirk. The quirk allowed him to create and manipulate any type of fire he can think of, usually a pitch-black flame that he can make hotter than the sun and even burn other flames. Additionally, he can shape the flames into anything he wants. Izuku got each of these quirks from criminals. Heavenly Ice. Izuku copied 6 ice quirks and he evolved them before combining them into one. The quirk allows him to make and manipulate ice to whatever degree he sees fit, usually. House and decided to start the garden first. He found some fruits that were natural in the mountain and brought them to the house and ate some of them before he planted the seeds to grow them. By the time he got finished, he noticed that he never really got around to fixing the house. He first disguised himself in his 𝗳𝗪𝗃𝗵𝗃𝗃𝗃 persona and went to the bank before he took out a loan of $10,000. Izuku needed to start a store and then advertise it. He found an open lot in a clean part of Tennessee and bought it from the number assigned to it for $500. After he bought it, he decided that he needed to sell products, so he went back to the same electronics store he was at before and asked an employee for the number of the owner. After he called the owner, he truly handled himself like a businessman and bought the store for $3,000. So all he had to do was set up a working store system to pay his now employees and he'll be fine. He decided that the first step would be to add another addition to the store, like a fixing station where employees could fix non-working products. Izuku explained this idea to his now employees and managed to create one and instructed the employees on how to fix basic problems. He also bought a router and computer before he left the store to keep for itself. After he made a second trip to his house, he managed to hook up the Wi-Fi and connect fairly enough and set up his computer. Thinking it was enough, he finally passed out after a long day. This chapter really just explains everything that happens to Izuku till he's 16, since I need to go through just how much he's trained and how much he's worked. I'll also include details on his training, business, and hobbies. Tennessee, Smoky Mountains, 7:30 a.m., 24/17. Outside the forest house training in the practice field was the now named Izuku Shimura. Izuku now stood at the height of 5 feet 10 inches and still had that fluffy black and green hair with emerald green eyes. His body had highly condensed and pronounced muscles all along his back, forearms, shoulders, torso, legs, and even had a six-pack, though all of that was needed in order to gain control over OFA, as a conditioned body is needed to use it without damage. He also grew a lot more handsome, or at least, that is what his grandma and Hinagra told him. His face had a sharp jawline, no facial hair, as he shaved often, and little to no fat on his face. That coupled with his freckles and jawline made Izuku considered to be handsome. He wore a black and white butler suit as he was working out. You may ask why, and that is simple. Izuku likes the butler outfit because it is both fancy and comfy, and he made it breathable and workable too. Though he does have dozens of other clothes to pick from, he mostly uses this one most of the time. During his time in Tennessee, Izuku has many skills. He completely fixed up the house he was living in, with it now having a working fridge, internet, roof, more solar panels, and fixed piping. Izuku also crafted a lot of custom-built furniture with chairs, benches, bed frames, couches, stools, and other home furnishings. Izuku also made quite a lot of farm space. He grew tomatoes, potatoes, cabbage, radishes, carrots, pears, peaches, apples, and oranges. Izuku had also hunted a lot of the animals of this mountain and has learned how to track footprints of almost any normal animal, and has had a very nutrient-rich diet. He also learned how to cook exceptionally well with all types of seasonings, flavors, oils, and has memorized 140 recipes. As Hayashi Yamafuka, he managed to create a large network of businesses around America. It first started out as controlling and buying some stores from Apple and Samsung, then he went from selling items to fixing and selling better items with better quality. Then he funded hospitals, research centers, factories, and transportation. He made a multi-billion-dollar business network. As such, he was quite rich. Though unlike most companies, Izuku also paid each of his lower working employees a fair wage of $13 per hour as a bare minimum and gave them fair leave time, appropriate sick days, appropriate morning leave, holiday bonuses, and other such bonuses. He also made it a top goal to report overworking and personally paid for their medication if they so needed it with discounts. As such, he was highly respected and has been known to be one of the biggest company tycoons in the world. He has over 2 million workers under him and he pays them all exceptionally well. Izuku also managed to branch out upon other businesses like technology production, to energy production, to waste removal, to hospitals, to dentistry, to even transportation companies. He also branched out to other countries like Russia, Japan, Canada, and Mexico and started and funded business in order to make as much of a global economic system that he could. He's improved companies in every major cornerstone of the world. Izuku also got an incredibly well-off education. He had a PhD in quirkology, electrical engineering, aerospace engineering, software and hardware engineering, physics, mathematics, biochemistry, chemistry, biology, chemical engineering, computer science, biomedical engineering, and economics, all when he was 16. He graduated high school when he was 12, graduated college when he was 14, and finished grad school at 16. He was also completely debt-free, as he got a lot of scholarships all in just 4 years and got all the money that he needed. Izuku also used these PhDs to personally help his technological businesses and to better develop them and their research. He also managed to hire himself under 𝗳𝗍𝗵𝗃𝗲, and once he actually turned 20, he would have 𝗳𝗍𝗵𝗃𝗲 die in a helicopter crash and he'd write himself to inherit his companies. One thing he did as Izuku Shimura was become a martial arts champion in America, with 3 tours under his 24 black belts. He 24 martial arts styles ranging from karate, kung fu, judo, taekwondo, and even pressure points. He used all these styles to secure his place as the martial arts champion in America 2 years in a row and then some. He is also using a lot of weapons. He learned from ex-Marines, ex-military, swordsmen, knights, and even monks on how to use a lot of weapons. Mostly he uses swords, knives, gauntlets, brass knuckles, and guns, though he mostly uses pistols. Izuku also has been training his body and quirks extensively. While he was in America, he gained a multitude of quirks, though you may ask how he got them. Some of them he got from civilians, others from pro-heroes, and others he got from thugs and villains that he beat up. Yes, Izuku did become a vigilante in America, and quite a famous one at that. He used appearance change to create another identity, which was known as the Disaster. The reason why was because he used all of his quirks in such a way that most people when they arrive at the crime scene think that multiple natural disasters blew through. His quirks were Divine Flame. Izuku copied several flame quirks and evolved them before combining them into one quirk. The quirk allowed him to create and manipulate any type of fire he can think of, usually a pitch-black flame that he can make hotter than the sun and even burn other flames. Additionally, he can shape the flames into anything he wants. Izuku got each of these quirks from criminals. Heavenly Ice. Izuku copied 6 ice quirks and he evolved them before combining them into one. The quirk allows him to make and manipulate ice to whatever degree he sees fit, usually the purplish-pink ice that can freeze just about anything. Additionally, he can shape the ice into whatever he sees fit. Izuku got these quirks from criminals. Maelstrom. Izuku copied 5 lightning quirks and evolved them before he combined them into one quirk. Izuku can create and manipulate any type of electrical charge at any voltage or amp and use it in any way he sees fit. Izuku got these quirks from criminals. Tornado. Izuku copied 7 wind quirks and evolved all of them before combining them into one. Izuku can create and control any type of air from oxygen or carbon dioxide, and he can manipulate it in any way he sees fit, from controlling its speed, to controlling the rate it moves, to controlling its force and density, everything. He also uses this quirk to increase his flight speed. Izuku got these quirks from criminals. Hyper Regeneration. Izuku has copied 37 regeneration quirks and has evolved all of them before he combined them all into one quirk. Izuku can heal from any injury possible and heal in milliseconds. He can heal from being decapitated and lost limbs with no problem whatsoever. Izuku got these quirks from a mixture of criminals, civilians, and one hero. Armament. Izuku copied and upgraded 4 quirks that improve the body's or object's durability before he combined them into one quirk. With this quirk, Izuku can create a sheen of seemingly metal around any part of his body or entire body and also surround any weapon or object he might be holding. This causes his body or object to become harder than titanium. Izuku got 3 of these quirks from pro-heroes and the other from a civilian. Increased senses. Izuku copied and evolved 10 quirks that improved each of the 5 senses before he evolved them and combined them all into one. His eyesight can see things clearly up to 10 miles away, he can hear clearly without taking any hearing damage up to 5 miles away, he can smell things that smell odorless, he can feel vibrations in the ground, air, and water up to 3 miles away, and he can taste even the most faintest of tastes. Izuku got all of these from civilians. Energy Manipulation. Izuku copied 8 energy quirks and evolved them before combining them into one. Izuku can create and manipulate any energy so long as it's pure energy and fire it in any way he can see fit. He can mostly use this to create shockwaves and other such forces, but he can also use this in conjunction with his other quirks to make them stronger. Izuku got 6 of them from criminals, 1 from a hero, and the other from a civilian. Appearance change. Izuku copied and evolved a spy's dream quirk. He can change his outfit and body appearance instantly. He used this quirk to start his business without any trouble at all as 𝗳𝗍𝗵𝗃𝗲. Additionally, this quirk allows him to create whatever clothes he wants so long as he can picture it in his head, and take off the clothes before making another one. Izuku got this from a teenager thief. Restoration. A quirk that Izuku was allowed to copy from an old lady who he stopped from being hit by a car. Izuku can restore any non-living object to what it was before and essentially not have to replace any furniture or object. This does include dead bodies, though it won't bring them back from the dead, though Izuku can use this on trees and other plants just fine. Weapon creation. Izuku took this quirk from a villain before he evolved it to suit his needs. He can create any type of weapon that he can think of, from any type of gun, any type of sword, any type of staff, any weapon that was created in the entire world, he can create as well. Though he mostly uses this to create knives, swords, and some pistols. Pocket dimension. A quirk he was allowed to copy and improve. Its original owner allowed Izuku to copy it because Izuku saved his grandmother. Izuku with this quirk can store an unlimited amount of non-living things inside this dimension, but it can only store at most 10 living things inside of it. Izuku mostly uses this quirk to store all the weapons he's made or to store food or clothes or any other type of stuff that he wants to store. Additionally, the pocket dimension is without the rules of time and place. As such, he can put an avocado in there and let it stay there for an entire year, and if he puts it into the real world, then it will be as if it hasn't aged even a second. Resistance. Izuku copied and evolved 53 quirks that improved the body's durability and combined them all into one. This quirk gives Izuku a natural resistance against all forms of toxins, any temperature, improves his bones and blood vessels' durability, makes it to where his muscles won't deteriorate under any circumstances, and makes his body able to withstand hundreds of thousands of newtons of force. He can also resist physic and telekinetic powers and forces. This quirk came from 37 civilians, 10 criminals, and 6 heroes. Teleportation. Izuku copied this quirk from a hero in America with the hero's permission, and he evolved it as well. With this quirk, Izuku can attach an invisible marking to any place that he has made physical contact with, and teleport exactly where that mark whenever he wants. Additionally, he can do so an infinite number of times in rapid succession without getting tired at all. Fighting spirit. Izuku can see the fighting skills and power of anybody that he sees. He can see that the fighting power and skill as a large flame that varies in color from person to person. The larger the flame, the more fighting power and potential that person has, the more fluctuating it is, or the sharper the flame looks, the more skill and practice in fighting that person has. Izuku's fighting spirit is roughly the size of a medium-sized house and is fluctuating constantly as a sharp, dark green flame. Additionally, Izuku can project this fighting spirit out onto people in the surrounding area and cause them to feel his power and his strength at the max, which causes them to be intimidated or rethink fighting him. Izuku copied this quirk when he was in the fighting tournament from another contender. Enhanced superhuman physique. Izuku copied 30 strength-enhancing quirks, evolved all of them and combined them into one quirk. He also copied 28 speed-enhancing quirks, evolved each of them and combined them into one. Because of this, his speed can reach near light speed and his strength can pick up skyscrapers and his punches equal those of all mights when he was in his prime. He solved cases and resolved crime all across America, from stopping bank robberies, to stopping thugs, to even incredibly important crackdowns. He's busted 34 drag trading rings, 14 child 𝗵𝗃𝗃𝗵𝐺 rings, 26 human trafficking cases, 4 criminal syndicates, 59 cases of political corruption where he was instrumental to arresting politicians that were committing crimes and getting away from it, and his most memorable achievement was when he saved the President of America from a terrorist attack and his family, along with 230 other people. Because of this, even though he chose to leave his identity a secret, Almost every American, no matter what ethnicity, political alignment, religion, or background, all respected him and held him in high regard. Most of the heroes of America also did the same too, as they all had a high amount of respect for him and wanted to meet him. Izuku had improved greatly with how he used and trained quirks. His divine flame quirk was trained to be able to become any shape he wanted, from simple constructs, to weapons, to even surrounding his weapons and parts of his body. He could make it able to surround his legs and fists to burn anything that he punched or kicked, without burning his hands or legs. He also developed a type of armor that he dubbed as 𝗬𝗏, where he makes an avatar of flames around himself to serve as a perfect offense and defense. His heavenly ice quirk was trained well. He could create any construct that he wanted, from complex designs of buildings, to unique shapes, to weapons, to even creating armor. Izuku managed to be able to control his ice's temperature too, as he could make it anywhere from -300°F to 90°F. Izuku also learned how to spread his ice over a large area incredibly fast, and can spread his ice at 60 miles per hour. 𝗵𝘃𝗃 was capable of making any type of amp and voltage of electricity and lightning that existed. Izuku learned how to control the amp and voltage rather quickly and can change them as fast as he can create lightning. He also uses it to surround his body parts with lightning to try and shock his opponent's nervous system. Additionally, he also learned how to run lightning and electricity through his weapons. 𝗪𝗪 was also improved greatly. He could control the air around him and make any type of air, whether it was nitrogen, oxygen, carbon dioxide, methane, and other gases. He could control all of these too and use them to wrap around his weapons to give them an incredible boost in power and cutting power. He could launch blades of highly condensed wind and when they were at full power could slice clean through solid steel. He trained his regeneration quirk as well. He trained by doing as much damage to his body as possible and healing it as quick as possible. He would start with minor cuts, then bleeding wounds, then bullet wounds, then he'd go to full-on lost limbs. He can now regenerate his entire body from just a single drop of BLD, and he can heal lost limbs in just a half of a second. Armament was trained as well. Izuku could now surround all of his body in armament and he trained it to be stronger than titanium. He can also condense the armament to become even stronger than that, though he never got a chance to test it out. He also uses armament to go around his blades to increase their cutting power, sharpness, and durability. His increased senses were also heightened to an even finer point than before. Izuku could taste everything in the air, any difference in the water he drank, and could even tell when his food was poisoned, and tell you what type of poison was. His sense of touch improved to the point that he could feel vibrations and pinpoint exactly where they were coming from through air, liquids, and solids for more than 14 miles. His sense of smell also improved, as he learned to memorize hundreds of thousands of smells, along with being able to memorize certain people's smells. His sense of hearing also improved, as he could hear someone's flow of BLD from 20 miles away and without being sensitive to sound. His eyesight was in another league as well. He could see every color of the spectrum and would be able to name each of them, and he could see clearly through the night and could see things that were invisible. Energy manipulation was also trained extensively. He could produce thousands of times more energy that a nuclear power plant could and control all of it rather easily. He could launch energy attacks that could topple buildings rapid fire, and he developed a way that he wrapped his feet and hands with pure energy and used it to add a lot more raw power to his attacks. He can also create shock waves that can cause earthquakes with just his bare hands. He can send these shock waves just by swiping his hands, and these shock waves can be devastating. Restoration became evolved to a very nice degree. He could restore things of any size to prime condition in less than 5 seconds, and he could also restore things that were touching the object that he was touching. Because of this, he can restore an entire area to pristine condition in less than 20 seconds. His weapon-creating quirk also became second nature to him. He could create any weapon of any design in his hand in a split second. The weapons were also top-grade quality too, and could last for at least 5 years normally. His pocket dimension was also a quirk that he trained rather well. He mostly worked on creating portals of different sizes and forcefully improving the capacity of the pocket dimension. He could now make portals that allow him to send most vehicles through them and can store them in his pocket dimension pretty easily. He managed to train his body's resistance as well. He could stand temperatures of 100 million degrees Celsius, which was shown when one time he took a nuclear warhead and nuked Mars with it, while taking the blow. He can stand temperatures of 2 degrees Kelvin, which was shown when he actually survived in the vacuum of space. His body can naturally withstand forces comparable to 1 trillion newtons, and he can survive 100 times the Earth's gravity. His teleportation was trained to its limits as well. He could teleport anywhere in America due to the sheer number of marks that he left everywhere. He could also teleport hundreds of times in rapid succession and not feel tired from it. He could also leave the marks on living things as well, and he just recently learned that he could teleport other living things as well, though only 4 people at best, and it does drain him of more energy than normal. His fighting spirit quirk was also finally integrated into his fighting style. He could accurately tell someone's power and skill at just a glance and be able to see their weaknesses rather easily. He could decipher exactly what it is that person was fighting for as well. Recently, he was also able to exert his fighting spirit onto others around him, which caused lesser-willed people to pass out or faint from the sheer exertion of pressure. His enhanced superhuman physique was also trained to its fullest. Izuku could control exactly how much force that he was exerting and change it as well. His speed was exactly the exact same, though because of this, he could also control his reaction time, though at its best he could dodge light. Right now, Izuku was using his elemental quirks to create a new unique combo to try and do as much damage as fast as possible. The result was a completely destroyed section of the forest. Sighing to himself, Izuku activated restoration and brought back the forest to what it was before and decided to walk into his house. He has quite a lot of books stacked around the room, a few bladed weapons, and quite a few instruments here and there. Smiling at the house, Izuku quickly decided on what things to bring with him to Japan. In order to go there, he'd have to be able to hide the fact that he was ever in America, which means that he'd have to stop it from being revealed. Quickly making a portal to his pocket dimension, he quickly threw in the items that he'd need to bring with him, which was mostly just his instruments, books, clothes, and some weapons that he left lying around. Another thing that Izuku has been doing is practicing musical instruments. He learned how to play a guitar, piano, drums, and bass very well, and has memorized 70 songs to play from. Izuku also earned a driving's license and motorcycle license. One of his favorite things to do is watch the sunset, as he truly feels that it is one of the most appealing things on earth. He also became an avid book reader and has read over 12,000 books, ranging from any topic, from school knowledge to random trivia. Izuku also took this time to use all tongue to learn every language he could, which was Spanish, Russian, Mandarin, English, German, Italian, French, Korean, Japanese, Arabic, Portuguese, Hindi, and Indonesian. He used the books around the room to accomplish that. Quickly leaving the house, Izuku smiled at it before he activated 𝗳𝗲𝗃, 𝗃 and fly, and quickly took off at the speed of Mach 15. He wouldn't need to worry about going back to there with a trip, as he left 10 teleportation marks all around the mountain, so he could go back there without even having to move. Izuku flew non-stop for about 35 minutes before he managed to disguise himself with smokescreen right above Tokyo. After he kept the cloud there for a bit and he scouted out the area with his senses, he spotted a place where he could land. He quickly managed to release the cloud and land right there, which was a small apartment building alleyway. Quickly going to a public restroom, Izuku managed to do his business and leave after he adopted a slightly different look. He now was in his 𝗂𝗍𝗵𝗃 persona. Quickly going around, he looked for a train station to get a ticket towards 𝗵𝗃𝗃 precinct. Izuku quickly paid for a ticket and boarded the train and waited around 10 minutes before the train started. After going all the way to 𝗵𝗃𝗃, which was around a full hour worth of a ride, Izuku finally departed the train and entered the streets of the city he once called home. After searching for a bit, he finally found an apartment building that he could use as his home. Quickly going into the apartment, Izuku bought the apartment building under Izuku Shimura's name. Even though he might be labeled as missing, it would be Izuku Yagi, which he wasn't anymore. He also explained to the front desk lady that he was an employee of his from America and that he wanted to personally pay for his rent. The front lady accepted it. Quickly paying for it in American dollars, The front lady accepted it but told him to trade it out for yen later, so Izuku agreed. Izuku was guided to his apartment room and noticed that he chose right. The apartment wasn't too fancy or too poor, it was just right. Living room and kitchen, bedroom, but picture the walls covered with notes and ideas. Bathroom, TV in living room. Izuku liked his apartment and thanked the lady before settling into the apartment. He set up his computer and connected it to the Wi-Fi and set up a few instruments, and set up his notes for studying and his room. He also set up some pots and pans and silverware that he stored in his pocket dimension. He also noticed that he'd need to go shopping soon in order to eat properly, and he needed to buy some more toothpaste, shampoo, conditioner, body wash, and deodorant. After he set up a teleportation mark inside the room, Izuku walked down to the lower floor and told the front desk lady something. Izuku Shimura should be here in a while. Can you watch out for him and bring him to his room? I've already unloaded his stuff that he needed. He is tall and has green and black fluffy hair with green eyes and diamond-shaped freckles on his cheeks. Izuku asked while still in his 𝗧𝗵𝗃𝗃 disguise. The lady at the front desk nodded and told him to just give her the key, to which Izuku complied. After walking out the building, Izuku looked around for a store to buy groceries nearby and found one only 4 blocks away. After walking for a while and remembering the feeling of being back in Japan, Izuku finally made it. He got 1 month's worth of supply of food and water, along with his bathroom essentials. He stored them all in bags before he left to go to the restroom and quickly changed back into Izuku Shimura in there. After he walked back to his new home, he truly felt like he was about to be able to be himself. When he entered the building, the lady at the front desk noticed him and told him that his room had already been paid for and that she'd lead him to it. Izuku smiled and thanked her as she led him to his room and gave him the key. Izuku bowed in gratitude and entered his new home. Quickly putting away all his groceries, Izuku made his way to the living room to enjoy a book or two. At Yagi residence, same time as last chapter, stepping out of her room was Izumi Yagi. Over the past 16 years, she grew up a lot and was 5 feet 6 inches. She still had green hair and green eyes, though her hair now fell down slightly past her mid-back. She wore a white t-shirt with the kanji fork t-shirt on the chest part and wore black shorts. Over the years, she grew up quite a bit from her younger years. Right now she had just finished 8th grade and managed to score top marks in all the exams. She also frequently worked out a lot, which was why under her clothes she had a bit of muscle under her skin. Though unfortunately, she did have quite a few setbacks. When she was 10, her parents revealed to her that they were both heroes, and that her father was the one and only All Might. That day made her incredibly happy then, though now she hates that very moment because it caused her to lose something that she was only trying to protect. Her brother, Izuku Yagi. Years ago, the day Izuku left, Izumi had just arrived at school and met up with her best friends, Shoto and Shoka Todoroki, and Katsuki and Katsumi Bakugou. They were all dressed in the school's main uniform and were talking in class while waiting for another person. Though by the time class started he still wasn't there. This slightly worried Izumi and her group, as Izuku had never once been late to class ever. She thought since her parents forgot to take him to school, maybe he overslept or was making breakfast. She thought that he'd show up late by the next PRD. Her friends had also thought the same. But by the end of the day, and there wasn't even a single sign of Izuku. He wasn't even in the hallways either. This worried the group even more than before, as Izuku had never skipped a day of school once in his entire life. Making their way out of the school, Katsuki finally spoke up about it. Where the hell is the nerd today? He's never skipped school in his entire life. He yelled. Maybe we beat him up a bit too hard yesterday and he was simply unable to get up. We should probably go check on him. Shoka suggested, though she did seem to not like that answer. Though everyone knew why, ever since they could remember, she had a crush on Izuku. That's not likely. We've beaten up Deku a lot more than we did yesterday and he's still gone to school. He must have finally gotten tired of it and just decided not to go for once. Katsumi said, though you could tell she didn't like that answer either, as she too had a crush on Izuku. We should do what my sister said and go check on him. Maybe he had some secret friend or something else to do that we just didn't know about. Shoto said as the group agreed and went back to Izumi's house. Entering the house, They were met with nobody there, which was expected. Izumi and Izuku's parents were out patrolling, though the fact that Izuku wasn't there only furthered their confusion. Izumi led the group upstairs to her room and went to the room that was the left of it to see if Izuku was in his room, though they weren't expecting what they saw. Instead of a room full of All Might and other hero posters and figurines, they were met with a completely barren room, with absolutely nothing in it. Now everyone was even more confused. This was Izuku's room. It has been since he was 4. If this wasn't his room, then what room was his? But then, where is Izuku's room? Izumi asked out loud since this was the place she thought her brother would be in since they were both 4. The group all separated and tried searching the house to try and find where it is he slept. They checked the guest bedroom, all the closets, all the other rooms too. The only ones left unchecked was the basement and attic. Izumi led the group down to the basement and opened the door to find something that shocked the group. It was dark, only the light coming from a window that led outside letting light inside, and a small lamp in the center of the room that was turned off. The floor was made of concrete and nothing sanitary by the looks of it. In the right corner of the room was a single small mattress that was dirty and worn out, as it had many stains and no sheets, though none of them noticed the note laying on top of it. To the left of it was a small run-down desk with nothing but bandages and first aid kits, though under it was a stack of notebooks that each of them recognized as his notebooks that had details about heroes and quirks. To the left of that was a set of dumbbells and a workout magazine that had ripped out pages. On the left was a run-down and definitely dirty wall with a message that was in dried BLD that said, "Keep going Izuku." And just under that message was a note that said, "I can't anymore. Not after my own family and friends abandoned me." This was not what they were expecting at all. Izuku was a fanboy. He had to have had at least a couple of hero posters of figurines. This didn't look like a room that belonged to a kid. It looked even worse than some prison cells. It was dirty, dusty, and practically exerted a sense of dullness from it. Making their way out the room, they all sat down at the living room and decided to wait for Izuku to come home. They waited patiently for 3 whole hours. They heard the door open and were all happy to see Izuku when it was only revealed to be Inko and All Might, coming home from work. "Hello there, future heroes. Are you all ready to begin training?" All Might yelled with a smile as Inko nodded as well. The group shifted uncomfortably before Shoka spoke up. "Uncle Toshi and Inko, have either of you seen Izuku at all today? We didn't see him at school and we're worried for him," Shoka said as she chose not to mention the basement. Is this Izuku a friend of yours? If so, I'd be happy to help," Inko asked and offered, which caused the group to sweat and worry even more. Mom, we're talking about my brother, Izuku. You know, my quirkless elder brother that looks exactly like me. And he always fanboys about heroes," Izumi asked as Inko and All Might were both stumped. They supposedly had a son. So why couldn't they remember anything about him? All Might dropped to his knees suddenly as he remembered the boy earlier that day, sneaking around in the kitchen while getting breakfast. Why a princess? He was getting breakfast the last time I saw him, though he left to his room shortly after. He probably just had trouble getting up to go to school. It's fine," All Might answered as he slowly started smiling again, though Inko was quiet still and tried to think as she slowly started remembering her son from when before he was quirkless and started tearing up at the realization. I'll talk to him once he comes back home from wherever he is," Inko said as she choked back tears and sat on the couch. And so, the group of now 7 waited for a total of 2 hours while they waited in dead silence and became increasingly worried about Izuku. "We should check his room to see if he left a note explaining where he went, then we'll all go look for him," All Might said as he got tired of waiting and he and Inko went up the stairs but were stopped by Izumi. Mom, Dad, Izuku's room isn't upstairs. It's in the basement," she said as All Might and Inko both looked at each other in shock at that revelation. Their son was living in their basement. And they didn't even know where his room was. The group all made their way into the basement and the 2 parents were shocked at what they saw. It looked like the room hadn't been cleaned in forever, and it was so dead and dull that it wasn't humane for a child to be even near. "This is my baby boy's room. 𝗵𝗃𝗃 asked out loud in shock and horror as it dawned on her that she had neglected her only son. 𝗵𝗃𝗃 was no better, as he was getting flashbacks from his past, where his 𝗵𝗃𝗃 parents left him in an orphanage and he was abused and tossed around in the foster system. They searched around until they found a small note on the bed. Izumi's group, not noticing it the first time, all walked over to it to see what it was. It read, "To whoever is reading this, I am surprised you're even reading this at all, since my sister and her friends only remember me because they use me as a practice dummy for their quirks. I imagine that it's you all reading this after 2 weeks of celebrating not having to see me at school. Since my dad, or should I say All Might, and my mother, or should I say Green Tornado, have neglected me for 6 years since it was revealed that I was quirkless. They haven't given me a single present, hug, conversation, or even acknowledgement of my very existence since I was announced quirkless. Anyways, yes, I was listening to your conversation. Not only that, but I learned that my own father was also quirkless, just like me, and yet he still ignored me despite going through similar mistreatment. And instead of giving me a chance to become a hero, you give a quirk that would have helped me become a hero to someone who already had the power to become a hero. You gave your quirk to someone who tried to completely crush my dream every day for the last 6 years, simply because she had a quirk. Additionally, you didn't even consider me an option at all. Hell, you forgot you had a son in the first place, and instead considered 2 who did nothing but abuse me, bully me, and beat me up with their quirks for the past 6 years as your sons. You considered people that made my life hell as your real children, instead of your actual one. And 𝗵𝗃𝗃 is just the same. She doesn't even remember that she had a son in the first place. The second Izumi got her quirk, I didn't even get a chance to become a hero. I want you all to know this. Toshinori Yagi, I don't consider you as my father, I hate your guts, and you'll never be a father to me, and you'll never be my hero. 𝗵𝗃𝗃 Yagi, I despise you entirely, you are not my mother, and you'll never be my family again. Izumi Yagi, you are not my sister, and I hope that One for All somehow rejects you entirely. Katsuki Bakugou, I used to consider you my brother and rival, but now, I want absolutely nothing to do with you. We aren't friends, rivals, enemies, we are nothing. Katsumi Bakugou, I considered you my sister and someone I could tell anything to, but you're just like your brother. I hate you and everything about you, but I want nothing to do with you. Shoto Todoroki, I considered you my brother and best friend. I was there for you when your parents were fighting and I still liked you even though you were always stoic. But now, I hate you and I want nothing more than to never look at you again. Shoka Todoroki, I've got to get this off my chest. I have always had a crush on you. You were so pretty, even with your scar you made my heart beat fast. Your quirk was amazing, and your personality was sweet and stoic just like Shoto. But after I became quirkless, I saw you for what you really are, a lowlife, selfish but bitch. Know that I will never fall in love with you, nor will I ever trust you even in the slightest. I am running away from this hellhole and I pray to whatever gods there is that I never see any of you again. Sincerely, Izuku. By the time they all finished reading the note, everyone was in shambles. Shoka and Katsumi were crying, as they forced their crush to run away and despise them. Izumi was breaking down as her own brother essentially didn't even recognize her as family. Katsuki and Shoto were both crying tears as they caused someone that they looked to as a brother to leave. All Might was on his knees crying and sobbing nonstop, as he literally left his son to the wolves and didn't even remember him, despite himself going through the exact same thing. 𝗵𝗃𝗃 was by far the worst though, as she was crying, sobbing, and hiccuping while grabbing her head trying to process what she had done. She abandoned her only son for something as stupid as a quirk. All Might got off his knees and turned towards the group of now crying kids and yelled out with fury. What were you thinking when you decided to use your quirks on my son? The group flinched as they had never heard their uncle yell anything with such rage and anger. We only wanted to stop Izuku from becoming a hero. We decided to use our quirks on him to make him afraid of quirks and stop him from trying to be a hero. Izumi shouted while crying. Izuku, I didn't mean to do it. I love you too, please just come back. Shoka shouted as she fell to the floor while begging for Izuku to come back, as she wanted Izuku to take her back and return her feelings. Deku, I'm sorry, Katsuki said quietly as his tears spilled on the floor. Even after you helped me, I still betrayed you. I'm sorry, brother. I promise, you and my sister will be married and heroes together. Shoto whispered while crying and looking down. Izuku, please come back to me. I won't ever turn against you ever again. I love you and I'll make up for everything. Katsumi yelled while crying for her crush to come back to her. 𝗵𝗃𝗵𝗃, both of you are in love with my baby boy? Inko asked while yelling as she didn't expect two of her surrogate nieces to actually be in love with her son. Izumi, I won't give 𝗲𝗲 to you. In fact, none of you will inherit it. When I find Izuku, I'll give it to him and help him become a hero. From this day onward, I won't help any of you. I used to consider you as family but not anymore. All Might screamed at them while crying. Flashback over, current day. Ever since then, things have gone downhill, and are only recently starting to look good for them. At first, the group of friends didn't want anything to do with each other, and they blamed each person for being responsible for Izuku running away. But after a year they all accepted that they were all equally responsible for him running away. Though one important thing that did happen was All Might's deteriorating health. All Might revealed the full past of 𝗲𝗄 to everyone and had his final fight with All for One about 5 years ago. He won, but half of his respiratory system was in shambles and his digestive system was for the most part destroyed. Yet even still, All Might kept 𝗲𝗄 and has been holding on to it in order to pass it on to Izuku and make him into his successor. He even denied his former sidekick, 𝗧𝗏𝗍, from helping him find a successor, saying that his only successor was his son. Ever since then, the group of friends snapped out of their funk and started training and looking for Izuku. They were all ready to try and earn his forgiveness. Katsuki and Katsumi both calmed down significantly, though they still were rude to people they weren't friends with and mostly chose to simply ignore people. Shoto and Shoka became withdrawn even more so than before, and they both vowed that they'd never use their fire side again to hurt people, even though their father and mother both wanted them to keep training with it. Izumi became focused solely on schoolwork and training, and for the past 6 years she stopped even talking to anyone outside of her friend circle and family. The school that they used to go to was investigated by All Might after he tried his hardest to find out just how much he was bullied. This resulted in many teachers and even the principal to be fired for looking the other way, and a lot of students that took part in the bullying were all given anger management and quirk counseling. Inko had it the worst out of all the group. For 2 months straight she stopped working in general and mostly was inside the basement while reading Izuku's notebooks. They were the only thing they had left that was physical proof that Izuku had wanted to become a hero, and she treasured them as if though it was the only thing she had left of him. After 2 months though, she started working again and talking to people, but she refused to explain why she was acting different. She talked frequently with Rei and Mitsuki, the mothers of her nieces and people she considered to be as sisters, and she learned a lot from Rei. Izuku would visit Rei a lot and she, on multiple occasions, was the person that fixed Izuku's wounds and cooked him dinner. Apparently, Fuyumi, Natsuo, and Tuya all did as well, and they all thought of Izuku as their younger brother. After 4 months she started talking to Izumi and her friends again. Though it's clear that she favored Shoka and Katsumi more though, simply because she thought of both of them as if they were her daughters-in-law. She became a little bit obsessed with Shoka and Katsumi both loving her son, so much so that she started planning on marrying both of them to Izuku the second they found him. She began to look at them as if though they were the only things that would make Izuku have a happy life, and as such she wanted them to help Izuku so as to help her feel like she played a part in Izuku's future and happiness. After a while, All Might too began to slowly favor them as well and wanted them to marry Izuku and be there with him as heroes. Katsuki, Shoto, Shoka, Katsumi, and Izumi have all become absorbed in training and studying. They all became determined to become heroes at UA and to search for Izuku along the way and to get him back home. Katsuki and Katsumi trained their quirks to become more efficient in other specialties aside from combat. They both could now use explosions to blind their enemies, and they both used it to enhance their speed and even be able to fly. Of the two though, Katsumi did have slightly stronger explosions and was faster. They both matured quite a bit and were both sought after at school because of it. Shoto and Shoka improved as well, though only on their usage of ice. They were both able to create and make massive constructs of ice, and they both had power with it. They also trained in creating specific shapes as well, though Shoto never truly picked up on it, which led to Shoka becoming the stronger sibling. Shoto and Shoka both grew up quite a bit though, and were both considered to be good-looking. Izumi trained her body to better handle the backlash of her quirk, which in turn caused her body to become quite resilient. She could move things as heavy as a house with only slight difficulty, though she did struggle at holding more than one thing with her quirk. As such, she still has a long way to go. Though she did try and talk to All Might about 𝗏𝗏, and asked if she could temporarily take it and just give it to Izuku once they found him. Though All Might simply refused, saying that in order to fit her to give 𝗏𝗏, she'd have to have it, which may get in the way of giving it to Izuku. All Might has been slowly getting weaker and weaker as the days go on, and because of it has started to become less and less active. He was only able to use 𝗏𝗏 at 100% for around 4 hours a day, and because of it, has had a bit of trouble staying at the top of the hero rankings. Just 2 months ago, 𝗫𝗏𝗏 surpassed him just barely in the statistics of stopping accidents, and 𝗫𝗏𝗏 was always number 2 in popularity rankings. Additionally, his strength has started to deteriorate as well, and because of that his physical strength and speed weren't even half of what they had used to be. Inko has managed to move up her place as the number 3 hero and has been working harder than ever. She made sure that all of the heroes in the country had known about her son missing and told them about what he looked like. She also did missions all across the country in even some of the most remote and desolate places, and she still had no luck of finding him. She begged the rest of the hero society to keep looking for him, but even after 6 years of constant search parties, there was no such luck. Their family and their friends had experienced an irreversible disaster. Izuku's apartment. Next day Izuku woke up with a start from his dreamland and started off the day on a fairly good note. The bed was a lot more comfortable than the one that he had in Tennessee, which was to be expected though. Izuku got up and made some breakfast before going through his morning routines, like brushing his teeth, doing deodorant, and taking a shower. After that, he went to his living room before he started making a detailed plan on what he wanted to do. He has 3 months before the UA entrance exam, which means that he has these 3 months to do business in Japan and settle himself back into Japan. His business network in America didn't need him to actually be there, as he could just send emails out to all of his board of directors and they'd pass the info and command down the chain. He'd only need to contact them once every month to see the well-being of his workers and to give them a different goal or task. He needed a business network in Japan. Yes, he did have some foreign businesses in Japan, like a hospital in Hosu, and a restaurant food chain that recently became popular, but that was really it. Besides, he did give all of his companies equal attention in all of the countries he had them in, but it would be better if he created more businesses in general so he could fully give people jobs while making sure that he could create a good amount of profit for himself. So he needed a plan to get more businesses in Japan other than just the conventional hospital and restaurant chain. Not that he couldn't make businesses in them, it was just better if he created and bought businesses of different variety and purposes. It was best to offer jobs of all types of varieties of people, that way he could give unemployed people chances to live while working in society, while also giving people with a higher education to be able to use that education for good use. One of the biggest businesses in Japan, however, was the hero business. Izuku wanted to fund and create a self-serving hero business. The way heroes get paid is that the government has a certain amount of money that they distribute to the hero committee, which they then distribute to the heroes that work under them, though every hero in the committee does get paid a living amount of wages that are decided by their popularity, their strength, and their contributions. As such, the amount of money that gets earned by heroes is all depending on them. But heroes that create agencies sometimes have different workings, where they each work under one important higher-ranking hero and they get paid by them in order to market themselves and get a higher wage, while also working for commercial agencies that have contracts with that agency. As such, it was a good option to create commercial businesses while funding certain hero agencies in order to create contracts with and fund in order to create money. Izuku thought up of some good options, as they were all heroes, their top-ranking heroes, but there were some problems. All Might and Green Tornado were completely off the table. 𝗫𝗏𝗏 was too, since he'd just tell them, and plus, Izuku just didn't like him. Rabbit Hero. 𝗵𝗃𝗏 wasn't in an agency and she doesn't do commercials. Wing hero, Hawks doesn't care for them and also doesn't have an agency. The laundry hero, Wash had enough marketing deals with laundry product companies. Ninja hero, 𝗳𝗧𝗏 doesn't do commercials either, though he could fund his agency. Fiber hero, Best Jeanist had his own agency and clothing company that he ran. The only hero that he could do was Dragoon hero, Ryukyu, and Shield hero, Crust. Both were open to do commercials, though Crust only did sponsorships for workout equipment, and he only did so if he knew that the equipment was top grade, so Izuku would need to buy a business that did that if he wanted to work with him, but Ryukyu was open and to his knowledge hadn't made any long-term or important business deals. Izuku decided to make Ryukyu his main partnership, and settled for having up-and-coming heroes like Kamui Woods and 𝗵𝗃 work with him as well. After he set up that plan, the next step was to make the offer, so he called Ryukyu's agency and managed to schedule an appointment with her 2 days from now and said that Izuku Shimura would be there. Now that he had that set up, all he needed to do was figure out what he wanted to do for these 2 days. He figured he could probably make sure his companies were running better before he decided to go buy a few spaces and set up a few new stores. He also needed to visit the Hero Committee HQ in order to settle something. Meanwhile, at the Yagi household, Izumi had just gotten up and decided that it was time to increase her training. She got ready for the day and made her way downstairs to see her friends and all their parents in the living room. She decided to enter into the conversation, which happened to be centered around her brother. I'll allow Izuku to marry Shoka. However, he better have awakened this oh so great quirk you say he has. Endeavor said while glaring at All Might. He put all of his life into succeeding All Might and he still failed, so the only way he'd surpass him is if his children or grandchildren did. He was hoping to marry Shoto to Izumi, but All Might said no because he said that she didn't have romantic feelings toward anyone yet. Yet he didn't want Izuku to marry Shoka because he was quirkless. He didn't want weak grandchildren, but apparently All Might told him that his son did have a quirk, and that it was just awakened later in life. I still don't know. I want Katsumi to be happy, but are you sure that Izuku will want to be with her? He did say that he wanted nothing to do with any of us, so what happens if he already found someone that he fell in love with? Masaru asked as everyone gave it thought, though not seriousness. Izuku will love me. He said so in his letter that he was always in love with me, so all I need to do is reignite that love and he'll be mine. I know he'll be mine, even Auntie Inko says so. Shoka said with certainty. I know that I can make him fall for me, after all I've got the old hag's good body, so I know I can at least attract his attention. Besides, he said that he loved me as a sister, so all I need to do is show him that I love him as a partner. Katsumi replied while looking at her dad. I'm sure my brat can make my nephew fall in love with her. The thing I'm most concerned about is how you'll both share him. Having a loving and caring boyfriend like Izuku is great and all, but how are you going to share him? No offense to Izuku, but are you sure he'll be able to satisfy everything you need? Mitsuki asked while worried about her daughter. Mom, I walked into Izuku changing once. If he has endurance, then he can handle both of us. Besides, it's not like SEC is actually that important in a relationship. Katsumi said while blushing at the memory in 5th grade. Besides, I think of Katsumi as a sister, so we'll both not have too many fights unless one of us gets more attention from our husband. And besides, we can both have him at the same time. Shoka answered while also blushing at what Katsumi had said. I'm most worried about what you two ignored from Masaru's question. What happens if he already is in a relationship with someone else? What are you going to do then? Ray asked, hoping that they'd just leave him alone. That won't happen. These two are the only ones that can make my baby truly happy. If he is in a relationship with someone who stole him, then me and Toshi will say that we only approve of him marrying Shoka and Katsumi. We may not have been a good part of his life, but he will still listen to us. We are his parents after all. Besides, I know for a fact that these two will truly give both me and Toshi a significant part of Izuku's happiness. And if the would-be girlfriend refuses, then I'll just force her to break up with him. Inko said confidently while getting slightly upset that her friends are starting to doubt her baby boy. I agree with Inko. Izuku can make your daughters happy and they can make him happy. It's a perfect marriage. Besides, as the boy's father, It is my duty to make sure that he stays loyal to his future wives. Your daughters will be with my son, All Might said, reassuring the parents. Though the other kids in the room also threw in their opinions. The nerd is perfect for my sister, she'd make him happy and keep him in line, and he'd make sure she stays safe. The nerd will accept her too once we all apologize to him. The nerd's too loving and forgiving not to. Katsuki said with a small smirk at the thought. I agree. Ever since I can remember, Shoka was in love with Izuku, and he had a crush on her. Meaning that he did have feelings for her and probably still does, just buried. I wouldn't accept anyone else as my brother-in-law because I know how much he means to my sister. Shoto said with a small smile while thinking of his sister and brothers smiling together. Okay, fine, we'll let you get married to him. But I still don't know if he'll actually be able to fall in love with again after what you did to him. Rei said while concerned for both Izuku and her daughter. My brother will accept them after we all apologize. Since I'm his sister, I can tell him that they've been saving themselves for him. Once he hears that, he'll know that they were all meant to be together. I'll convince him to be with them. After all, it's a sister's job to make sure her elder brother's girlfriends are all right, and I definitely approve of them. Izumi said, catching everyone's attention. Though it did somewhat surprise them that she was listening. All right then, we'll sign the DMN papers. Endeavor yelled as he, Masu, Mitsuki, Rei, Inko, and Toshinori all signed the documents, causing the kids to smile and celebrate. Meanwhile, with Izuku on his way to the hero committee, Izuku was walking down the street when he stopped suddenly and shivered as he felt something annoying was going to happen to him in the future. Why do I think that has something to do with my tormentors? Izuku asked to himself as he kept walking. He made it to the building and was told that he couldn't carry any weapons, to which Izuku agreed and didn't keep any and allowed the guard to scan him for medals. After he got in, he immediately made his way up the building and found the president, who was busy with paperwork. Without much warning, Izuku opened the doors and caught her attention. Excuse me, I think you have the wrong room. I'm the committee president of security, and if you want to speak with me, then you need to schedule an appointment. The president said as she started to slightly glare at him. Though Izuku merely smiled a bit before fully entering. Forgive me, MDM president, I simply wanted to speak with you urgently and wanted this appointment to be off the record. Don't worry though, I won't borrow more than a minute of your time, Izuku said while still smiling. Suddenly he opened a portal by holding his palm out and seemingly pushing the air, and out of his palm was a dark blue portal. He then used his speed quirks to appear behind the president and grabbed her hands behind her back. Don't worry, I promise to you that I won't harm you. In fact, I'm here to do the exact opposite. Don't worry, all I wish to do is gain your trust and gain a sort of partnership with you, Izuku said with sincereness as the president reluctantly agreed and went through the portal, with him right behind her. The portal appears to have led to an endless space of nothing but a starry sky, and the ground was a shimmering transparent blue crystal. Through the crystals, though, underneath her she could see an organized armory filled with weapons of all sorts. To the left of her was a table with hot tea, and to the right of her was a ginormous shelf of books. To her, though, the setting was quite nice to talk in. After Izuku came into the portal, she was startled slightly when he spoke. This place is my pocket dimension, and in here, time has stopped in the outside world. When we get back, it will appear as if though time hasn't even passed a single second. I simply brought you into here to explain everything and tell you about everything you want to know. So please, sit down and enjoy some tea, Izuku said as he sat down at the table after pulling her chair out. She felt slightly better now, though not by much, and sat down. Now then, allow me to properly introduce myself. I am Izuku Shimura, and I am the biological son of 𝗵𝗃 and the grandson of Nana Shimura, the former #1 hero. Additionally, I have an improved version of 𝗵𝗃's quirk, and I want to be a hero, Izuku listed off as the president stood up while glaring at him. 𝗵𝗃 didn't have any children. The hero committee made sure of that. And even then, if you are his son, why should I trust anything that you say? She screamed at him due to what she thought was a lie. It's all right, I'll explain everything. You are correct, 𝗵𝗃 was never able to properly have a son because he was pretending to be someone else. That someone was Hisashi Midoriya, though funnily enough his real name is 𝗧𝗓𝗧𝗏 Shigaraki. Anyway, the reason why you should trust me is because ever since I could remember, I've wanted to become a hero, the strongest hero this world has ever seen, and to save and help people everywhere. You may not believe that, but I've went through hell and back just for that goal. Since you are the president and essentially the authority figure to heroes, and since I'll become one later in life, it is best if you and I have a better partnership than just subordinate and boss. I wish to help you in any way that I see fit, so let me ease your worries, ask me any question and I'll answer it. Izuku explained to her as she calmed down slightly. Very well then, let me ask you this. How many quirks do you have, and how many of them have you stolen? She asked while glaring. So far I haven't stolen any quirks, though I have permanently copied a lot of quirks that I've lost count. Though I did combine a lot of quirks and I have copied and combined a grand total 16 quirks so far, though in my possession I actually have 22, well, technically 23, but still. Izuku answered. Okay then, how are you connected to Nana Shimura? She asked. Like I said, she is my biological grandmother from my mother's side. My mother was 𝗵𝗃𝗃 Shimura, now Yagi. You may also know her as Green Tornado, though I personally don't look at her as my mother. Izuku said while slightly scowling at 𝗵𝗃𝗃. And why is that? The president asked, wondering why someone wouldn't want a top-ranking hero as a parent. At the age of 4, I was misdiagnosed as quirkless, and because of that, both she and my stepfather all might have done nothing but ignore and neglect me. My own sister and her friends abused me as well, so I ran away. The president was going to call him a liar, but she stopped after remembering that 𝗵𝗃𝗃 asked her to keep heroes looking for her son after he ran away. And yet when she asked her why he ran away, she always refused to answer. What is it you are trying to get by coming to me of all people? What do you want from me? She asked while wondering why he needed her. I asked that you grant me a business deal where one of my bosses, 𝗧𝗓𝗧𝗏, can help the committee out and share some of the profit. Additionally, I want you to grant me a hero license so I can keep up heroing without being illegal. And if it isn't too much trouble, can you change the documents to say that you granted me it when I was 10? Izuku said and asked while bowing. What do you mean you kept up hero work? Were you a vigilante? She asked. Yes, you see, after I turned 10, I ran away to America and have been there for the last 6 years. While I was there, I got my education and managed to become a vigilante. You may have heard of the vigilante that saved the president, Disaster. That was me. Izuku said. Okay, I can set up and give you an international hero license, but I'd need to talk to the president of America's Hero Committee if I wanted to make that official. Then you'd be said to be an undercover hero to help out America, and we can say that it was a plan that me and the president agreed with. She said while remembering to give the other hero president a call. Thank you very much. That is really all I came to ask you about. Is there any other questions? Izuku asked while glad that he could finally become a hero. Not at the moment, but know that if you show behavior of your biological dad, then me and you will have problems. This world isn't ready for another all-for-one as a villain, but they might be ready for one as a hero. She said. Great. If you want to, you can leave right now, or you can stay longer if you want. After all, the time of the real world hasn't even moved slightly. Izuku said and offered. No, let's go back. I have paperwork that I need to finish. She said as Izuku agreed and created the portal, and they walked through together. When they got back, he was right. The plane that was going over the building was still exactly how it was before, and the coffee on her desk was still as hot as it was before, despite around 5 minutes passing. That's some quirk you have. She complimented Izuku while he simply smiled at her. Okay then, I'm going to go now, but when you mail me my license, send it to this address. He said as he handed her a paper of his apartment and his room number. All right then. If that is all, then you're dismissed. By the way, refer to me as MDM from now on, understand? She said sternly. Yes ma'am MDM, he said with a bow as he teleported back to his apartment. The hero president rubbed her temples and sighed loudly. Why did I take this job when I'm 52? She asked tiredly as she could feel a migraine coming up. Days later, Ryukyu Agency Izuku stood outside of the building while still in his normal form, as Izuku Shimura. This was okay since when he made the call as Hayashi, he told Ryukyu that he was in America and that one of his top employees, Izuku Shimura, would be doing the deal with her agency. So that meant that she at least knew of him being expected. He wore his normal bartender getup with a green tie and some black shoes. He had his hair wild though, so he looked a tad bit unusual. Walking up to the front door and into the lobby, Izuku immediately noticed the choice of design for Ryukyu's agency. It was slightly traditional with a red floor as an interior. Izuku quite liked it. Making his way up the elevator to the top floor, he made his way to the office where he knew Ryukyu was in, though he could sense someone else in that room. He opened the door and was met with Ryukyu, in her hero costume which was a red and yellow marked dress, with white sleeves that weren't connected, and black boots. She had yellow hair and white claws over her right eye and had yellow eyes. Behind her head was what appeared to be black wings. Though the other person was in the room was a periwinkle blue long hair that went down to her knees. She was wearing a tight-fitting sea foam green, dark blue, and pale mint bodysuit, with fitting knee-high pale green boots with a turquoise spiral around the ankles, with yellow gloves and sea foam green gauntlets. She also had horns on top of her head. The two quickly turned to him, which reminded him to introduce himself. "Hello there, my name is Izuku Shimura. I'm here on behalf of Hayashi Yamafuka for a business deal. It's nice to meet you both," he said as he bowed to show respect. Ryukyu bowed as well with the mystery girl before sitting down in her couch with the girl while Izuku sat across from them in a chair. "So then, allow me to set my requirements for this deal. Absolutely nothing inappropriate for me or any of my employees to do. We will not do any photo shoots, and we will not do anything that is something we don't agree with. Are these conditions okay with you?" she asked as she slightly glared at him. "That is perfectly acceptable, as the boss doesn't have even the slightest interest in those things, as he views them as beneath him. That and he also wishes to become a major partner with this agency, so he'd care about keeping you in his good graces, which means nothing uncomfortable. For the most part, he only wants you to promote some products of a food chain he owns and to maybe help his start a few early businesses in Japan. Does that sound okay with you? If it goes against something your employees want, then they don't have to do it either," Izuku said and asked. "That is understandable, I'll sign the contract if you have it," Ryukyu said as Izuku nodded before he opened a portal which caused her to sweat slightly. Though the other person in the room was looking at the portal with amazement. After Izuku reached his hand inside the portal, he pulled out a piece of paper that was the contract. "Just sign here and I'll be on my way," Izuku said as he got a pen from his pocket and put it across the table to Ryukyu. She hesitated slightly before signing it, but afterward she stood up and asked exasperatedly, "Did you have to store something in it? Quirk, me and 𝗵𝗃𝗃 here almost used our quirks on you." Though the now proclaimed 𝗵𝗃𝗃 however immediately ran up to him and started bouncing up and down on her feet and started talking kinda fast. "Hey there, what type of quirk is that? Can you store things bigger than that? Is there a limit to what you can store? Can you store anything in there? Can I go in there?" She asked questions about his shown quirk in rapid succession. Izuku was surprised and slightly happy. Another person had a deep appreciation and curiosity in quirks like he did. "She kinda reminds me of myself cute," he thought to himself with a small smile and chuckle. "In order, it is a pocket dimension quirk. I can currently store things the size of small buildings in there. There is no limit as the dimension can expand so long as I choose. Yes, I can store anything in there, and yes you can, though not right now," Izuku answered while smiling. 𝗵𝗃𝗃 smiled at having her questions answered while also pouting at not being able to go through the portal. Ryukyu on the other hand was completely shocked at what she had seen. Someone could answer and understand all of her questions. "Well then, now that that's settled, I have to go. I'll be going to make my debut as a hero today," Izuku said as he stood up while Ryukyu and 𝗵𝗃𝗃 were both curious. "Excuse me, but aren't you 16 years old? Hayashi told me about that in the call I had with him. Do you have a license?" she asked as she didn't want to think of a kid as a vigilante. "Yes, I am 16, and yes, I do have a license. I have had a license since I was 10 years old. The only reason why I haven't made my official debut was because I was in America as an undercover hero there sent by MDM president," You might have heard of the 𝗵𝗃𝗍𝗄 disaster. Izuku said and asked, to which both 𝗵𝗃𝗍𝗄 and Ryukyu nodded, though it made sense. Disaster was the world's most famous vigilante. Well, that's me. And I wasn't necessarily going to announce who I was to the public until now. Izuku explained as their eyes widened, though 𝗵𝗃𝗍𝗄's eyes gained a glint in them. Suddenly, she took a hold of him and started shaking him before hugging him tightly. Izuku was confused and quite a bit flustered, and he could hear his uncle and grandma snickering at him in his mind. The reason why? I can feel her 𝗵𝗃𝗧𝗃𝗃 pushing on me. Too close. Izuku thought as he was blushing red and heard the past users of OFA break out in laughter at him. Though they couldn't blame him, simply because he grew up in total seclusion. He lived in the woods for 6 years and only interacted closely with women when he was as 𝗧𝗵𝗲, and even then at most he gave them handshakes. Now he was being hugged by a well-developed and generally considered to be appealing woman, so it was only natural that he was blushing. I can't believe I get to meet you. I have so many questions. I can't believe the disaster is younger than me. How come you can control all the elements like you do? Can I see your quirks? How can you use your elements and the pocket dimensions? How 𝗧𝗍𝗄, she asked while hugging the life out of him, but was interrupted when Izuku pushed himself out of her hug while coughing in his hands. Please, don't just hug me like that out of nowhere. Thanks for being a supporter of me, I guess. And to answer your question, I have multiple quirks. My main quirk allows me to steal, give, evolve, copy, combine, destroy, and erase quirks. It's called All for All. Izuku said while still blushing as Ryukyu and 𝗵𝗃𝗍𝗄 were shocked at what his true quirk was. A quirk like that could be the strongest in the world. Anyway, I have to go. See you later. Izuku said with a wave as he started leaving, but 𝗵𝗃𝗍𝗄 grabbed a hold of his hand and had him face her. Her face was really close to his and he could feel her breath on him. She was staring at him intently and seriously before she smiled brightly. I'm 𝗵𝗃𝗍𝗄, hero name, the shocking hero, wave motion. It's an honor to work with you, she said, causing Izuku to blush slightly and smile back. Very well then, I'm Izuku Shimura, hero name, the hero for all, disaster. It is an honor to work with you too, Izuku said in kind. She just kept on smiled as Ryukyu smirked at the two before leaving them be. If you want, let me give you my number. If you ever need help or want to hang out, just give me a call or text, she said as she wrote her number on a piece of paper and gave it to him. He took it and smiled before heading off. He teleported back to his apartment and put the number on his desk. First though, he needed a shower. With Izumi's friend group, 𝗳𝗍𝗿𝗺 Izumi and her friends were picking up 𝗳𝗍𝗿𝗺 since it was a place where litter and trash washed up onto the shore. They were doing so to clear the beach and build more muscles on their bodies. They also practiced their quirks there in order to get better control over them. Katsumi and Shoka were working on picking up one pile when suddenly they both stopped what they were doing at the exact same time. The other three noticed as well and turned towards them. They both looked at each other before gaining slightly angry faces. What's wrong, sis? Both Katsuki and Shoto said at the same time, worried for their sisters. Someone is getting close to our Izuku. They both yelled as they felt that they were losing him somehow. Well, even then, remember what Mom said? We'll just force her to break up with him. Besides, when my brother sees that you two love him, he'll probably break up with the skank on his own, Izumi said, reassuring the two other girls. Though they still hated the idea of some nobody taking their husband. Back with Izuku after showering, Izuku set up his computer and gave emails to all of his companies in order to keep them running and have a status quo. Izuku managed to set up 5 new stores and hire all the appropriate staff for each, which included a phone store, a tea shop, a skateboard store, a minor car dealership, and a small clinic. All of them were set up in record time and had all the right staff for each of them. He had to make sure that all of them had business, so he set up some commercials with Ryukyu for each of them in order to get them better audiences and buyers. After setting up some appointments that he had on the contract with Ryukyu, he decided to think about what he should do. He planned on making his debut today, so he'd have to go patrolling and stop one criminal. So, with his mind made up, he decided to use appearance change to create his custom hero costume. But they are dark green. It was a tattered black cloak with dark green combat and a black shirt, along with his signature red shoes. It was a tad bit simple, but he truly felt comfortable in it and powerful. He smirked at himself in the mirror before teleporting off. He'd set up teleportation marks all across Japan on his third day back in Japan, so he had access to all of Japan. Quickly teleporting off, he stretched his senses and danger sense to their max and tried to locate any danger or potential danger. That was when he felt a dangerous entity to the left of where he was, or near the 𝗵𝘃𝗵𝗃 main district. And with that he sped off flying. Minutes later, 𝗵𝘃𝗵𝗃 main district Izuku arrived at the district and noticed a lot of people were all huddled around a certain block and decided to investigate. What he found did nothing but annoy him. Out of all the civilians I could have saved, why'd it have to be you? Izuku muttered quietly. From atop a nearby building, there was a sludge villain that was holding his former friend, Katsumi, hostage. Additionally, the heroes around weren't doing anything at all. 𝗵𝗃𝗄𝗏 said that he couldn't get near with all the fire, Backdraft was busy keeping the civilians at bay and putting out the fire, 𝗵𝗃𝗍𝗍 was complaining about the size of the street, and 𝗵𝗃𝗏𝗏 said that he couldn't punch with the sludge holding a hostage. Katsuki, Izumi, Shoka, and Shoto were all there too, though Backdraft was holding them back from getting into the situation. Izuku sighed in annoyance before he jumped into action. With Katsumi, 3 minutes earlier Izumi and her group had just finished working out at Dagobah Beach and were walking on the street together on their to Izumi's house. They crossed underneath a bridge and when they stepped around in the middle, they all failed to notice that the sewer lid was lifted up. They were made aware when a giant hand of slime managed to grab Katsumi's entire body and pull her towards it. They all looked around and saw a giant blob of dark messy green slime that had their friend inside of its body. Finally, I have a hostage, it said as it looked to the group now as they were slightly frozen in fear. But what's a couple more? He yelled as he was going to grab the other kids. Fortunately, the sewer burst open with wood as it distracted the villain and made it run out the bridge, letting Izumi's group run after him with the hero. That chase led for 2 minutes until it came to now. Current time. Izuku, please help me. Katsumi thought while struggling in the sludge's grasp while almost blacking out. Please, someone. Anybody. Help my sister, I can't lose her too. Katsuki thought desperately. Please, someone save her. Shoto thought while almost using his quirk. You and I are supposed to be sister wives. I can't lose you now, not when we promised to be with Izuku. Shoka thought with tears in her eyes. Why aren't the heroes doing anything? Aren't they supposed to be helping her? Izumi thought, wishing that she had a license so she could help out. All the spectating civilians also hoped that Katsumi ended up all right. The heroes made the excuse of waiting for another better hero to show up with a suitable quirk. This struggle went on for 10 more seconds before a flash of green lit up the area, blinding everybody there. When the light died down, there was a tall cloaked figure with black and green hair and his back turned to them. The cloak blowed in the wind dramatically, which slightly riled up the crowd. The sludge villain also looked at the new figure with hatred and confusion. And who the hell are you? He yelled as Katsumi's eyes widened at seeing the figure's face. Izumi's group also were hoping to see the figure's face as he looked a lot like an older Izuku. I'm just a hero for everybody. You may call me Disaster, he said as he held out his hand as wind circled around his palm, facing the villain. Disastrous death, air type. The now named Disaster yelled as he launched the disc of air pressure at the villain, causing most of its body to have a giant hole where slime used to be. This also caused Katsumi to be released, which caused Disaster to jump into action and grab her before teleporting to the crowd and dropping her down. While that happened, the civilians and heroes were frozen in shock. The mystery man named Disaster had saved the girl in less than 5 seconds, something that the heroes had trouble with. The heroes were shocked and slightly angry at the fact that the new figure managed to steal the spotlight. Disaster teleported back suddenly and immediately got another attack ready, as the sludge villain was starting to reconnect itself. Disaster held out his hand as a blue energy ball was suddenly hovering above his hand. He then threw the ball at the villain, which caused it to explode everywhere. It also caused a massive gust of wind to whirl around the area and out the fire. Everyone was shocked at what they had just seen. He had effortlessly defeated a villain that multiple heroes couldn't even touch, and he did so in 2 attacks as well. 𝗧𝗪 turned around to the crowd, and everyone saw piercing fluorescent green eyes that seemed to glow ominously. He also had diamond-shaped freckles which caused 𝗧𝗵𝗲 and her friends to smile and almost burst into tears. Izuku was right in front of them. He had come back. Izuku then spoke in a voice that calmed the crowd and the audience. "Is everyone okay? Nobody else was hurt, right?" he asked, showing concern. "Yes, the crowd wasn't involved. Also, thanks for putting out the fire," 𝗵𝗃𝗏 said as he let down the water rope keeping the civilians back. "That's good. If that is all, I'm going to contain the sludge and turn him in," Izuku said, getting a nod from 𝗵𝗃𝗏. He went to a puddle of sludge before he put his hand in it, before forcefully disabling the quirk. The sludge suddenly turned into a shirtless man of 5 feet and 6 inches, wearing a pair of baggy cargo shorts. Izuku created some chains and tied the man's hands before carrying him to the nearest police station. Though he was stopped by the heroes minus 𝗵𝗃𝗏. "Hold it right there. Who are you?" 𝗵𝗃𝗧𝗏 asked while pointing at Izuku angrily. "I'm the hero for everybody, 𝗧𝗪. I thought I said that when I got here," Izuku said, and then asked to himself. "I've not ever heard of you. Are you a vigilante? Wait, aren't you that vigilante from America?" 𝗵𝗃𝗏 said as he got in a fighting position with 𝗵𝗃𝗧𝗏 and 𝗵𝗃. Here's my hero license," Izuku said with a sweat drop as he held his license up for them to see. All their eyes widened though when they saw his age and the date he received the license. "You expect us to believe that you have been a hero since you were 10 years old, kid. You're out of your mind," the lady said as they all still kept up their fighting stances until 𝗵𝗃𝗏 coughed into his hands. The heroes turned to him holding his phone in his hand before showing it to them. On his phone was a message on the Hero Net 2 days ago. It was the MDM president and it read, "Heroes, if you see a person calling himself 𝗧𝗪, do not engage him. He has been a hero since he was 10 years old and rightfully earned his hero license. He is a professional, official, and legitimate hero." All 3 of them turned around to Izuku standing there before a lady stomped over to him angrily. "You stole all the credit and the spotlight. How dare you do so on the day of my debut?" she shouted accusingly at him. "But I checked Hero Net all day today. You never announced that you'd make a debut. And even still, you all were just standing there not helping, so I had to help." "Well, okay, 𝗵𝗃𝗧𝗏 gave chase and 𝗵𝗃𝗏 contained the civilians, but that was it," Izuku replied while being confused. The lady stuttered before huffing and stomping away, with 𝗵𝗃𝗏 and 𝗵𝗃𝗧𝗏 following after her. 𝗵𝗃𝗏 thanked Izuku with a handshake and took the villain off his back before making his way to the station. Izuku sighed before he turned to the crowd as they all congratulated him. The crowd were cheering as the new hero had managed to stop the villain in no time at all. A lot of people shook his hand before Izuku excused himself from the crowd. "Sorry everybody, but I've got to go patrol some more. Stay safe," he said before flying in the air and taking off. Through Izumi's group all tried to chase after him. Though once he got a certain distance away, he simply teleported away to the top of a building. "Well, that was something," Izuku said as he continued his patrolling. Yagi household. Later that day, Izumi and her group rushed through the door and found Toshinori and Inko on the couch watching TV. They noticed the group's expression and turned it off so they could speak. "Dad, Izuku's here in Japan's," Izumi yelled out loud. This immediately got both of them to stand up with a burst and shocked expressions. "Where is he? We have to bring him home right now," Toshinori said, activating his buff form. Inko also got up and was going out the door, but they were stopped. "Hold on, uncle and auntie. That isn't all. Izuku's a pro hero now. And according to him, he's been one for the past 6 years. Katsuki yelled out. "What? But how? He was quirkless when he was 10, so did he actually awaken a quirk, or did he get one from?" Inko asked, only to have a very wrong and terrible idea being put into her head, as All Might also got the same idea as well. "I don't know how, but it is possible that Izuku took a few quirks from All for One. He had a wind quirk and an energy quirk. It also looked like he could teleport people," Shoto told them while remembering the air blasts, the green flash and the energy ball. Even still, he saved me. This means that he still wants to become a hero. And even more importantly, it means he still cares about us. Katsumi yelled out with tears in her eyes. All Might and 𝗵𝗃𝗀 both took that as a good sign. Him being a hero means that he still had his old dream and goals, meaning All Might could help him. All right then, all we need to do is find out where he lives and to confront him. Luckily, I have connections to the hero president. All Might said confidently. No offense, Dad, but how will that help us out in finding Izuku? Shoka asked. She started calling him Dad after her parents signed the marriage contract. The Hero Committee has the addresses of all of the heroes and employees. They have these in case the hero or employee in question can get delivered their paychecks and to make sure that they can reach them physically easily. Employees and heroes' addresses are able to accessed by higher-ups of the committee or by heroes who rank in the top 10, which we do. 𝗵𝗃𝗀 explained to them. That means that all I have to do is ask to see his files. While I'm at it, I'll ask 𝗵𝗃𝗀 president why she hid him from us all this time. All Might said with a scowl at the end. The group all smiled at the thought of Izuku coming back home, though 𝗵𝗃𝗀 and Izumi were both sad. Their brother and baby boy had returned to Japan and yet he didn't come home to them. They'd fix that by apologizing and getting him back into their house. With Izuku was continuing his patrol and setting up more teleportation marks as he was running across the buildings. He stopped so far a purse snatcher, a would-be kidnapper, a lost child, and returned a puppy. He was continuing his patrol when he heard a crying child in a dark alleyway. He looked down and saw a little girl with bluish-white hair with red eyes and a small horn on the right side of her forehead. She was wearing a ragged dress and lots of bandages around her arms and legs, and he could tell she was hurt. Quickly going down the alleyway, he picked her up and flew up high as she screamed. He quickly teleported to his apartment building so he could calm her down. The little girl was confused when she opened her eyes only to see that she was no longer in the air and instead inside of a nice apartment. She looked up at Izuku and was scared by what he was wearing, so he used appearance change to dress up in his normal bartender getup. The little girl calmed down slightly, seeing that he didn't have an angry look in his eyes or even a small sense of annoyance. He only looked concerned. He knelt down on his knees and put his hand on her shoulders, though she immediately flinched at the contact. Noticing this, he let go of her before he scared her even more. She backed up until she was against the wall and looked terrified of Izuku. It made his stomach churn. Wait, it's okay. I'm not going to hurt you. Izuku spoke softly while trying to calm her down. It didn't work though, as she still kept her guard up. I'm Izuku Shimura. Can I have your name? Izuku said and asked. The girl was terrified before she started breathing slowly. 𝗵𝗃𝗀𝗃. The now named 𝗵𝗃𝗃 said while still terrified out of her mind. 𝗵𝗃𝗃, do you want anything to eat? Izuku asked, noticing now that she looked slightly malnourished. She didn't say anything as she was still trembling, but nodded. Izuku smiled and headed into the kitchen and got her some food to eat and some water. He made sure to pay attention to the vibrations of the apartment and noted that she hadn't moved at all. Quickly getting the snacks, which were some carrots and apples with some water, he made his way back to 𝗵𝗃𝗃. He set them in front of her on a tray and sat down. 𝗵𝗃𝗃, please eat this food so you'll have energy, Izuku said with a kind smile. 𝗵𝗃𝗃 still shook but hesitantly ate the food in front of her. After around 15 minutes, 𝗵𝗃𝗃 had ate the food in front of her, though Izuku calmly noted that she enjoyed the apples more than the carrots. 𝗵𝗃𝗃, may I ask why you were running through an alleyway? Izuku asked calmly. 𝗵𝗃𝗃 flinched at the question before she stuttered an answer. I was running away from the 𝗵𝗃𝗃𝗀𝗃 man, she said quietly and with terror in her eyes and voice. Izuku remained calm on the outside, but on the inside he was angry that someone would even think of terrorizing a small child like this. Can you tell me about this bird man? What did he look like? Izuku asked. 𝗵𝗃𝗃 shook and shuddered but responded nonetheless. He had a bee-bird mask on his face. He always had a 𝗵𝗃𝗃 furred green jacket with a black suit. He always wore 𝗬𝗃𝗧𝗟𝗘 white gloves on his hands. He had BL black hair and yellow eyes. 𝗵𝗃𝗃 said while shivering in fear. Izuku narrowed his eyes at the description before he smiled at 𝗵𝗃𝗃 and spoke calmly again. 𝗵𝗃𝗃, I promise you this. That bird man will never come close to you again so long as I live. Eri, do you have any family members? Izuku asked. Eri looked at the ground before she started crying. No. Birdman, it is that I was cursed, that I'd never see 𝗵𝘃𝗲 or 𝗵𝗲𝗄 because I killed them. She said, breaking down as she started crying again and bawling her eyes out. Izuku was now no longer mad. No, he was who the hell does that to a child? He saw that Eri was still crying and pondered how he could help her. That was when he was pulled into his mindscape by the previous users of 𝗳𝗧𝗧𝗟. Oh, what is it? Izuku asked face to face with his grandmother and uncle in particular. Izuku, you should adopt her, Nana said with a warm smile. Though Izuku immediately started freaking out and denying it. What? No, I can't. I'd be way too busy as a hero, and even more so as a student. She doesn't have any family, so maybe I could have someone adopt her. She'll be fine if I do that. Izuku shouted as he tried to get out of his mindscape, though his uncle stopped him. Izuku, do you really think that this bird guy won't come after her in her new family? Can you really trust a complete stranger to protect a girl that is wanted by a potentially dangerous criminal? His uncle asked softly. Izuku got mad though and started shouting back. I'll just leave her with a pro hero or something. She'll be fine in their care instead of mine. Izuku yelled, though he was stopped when Daigoro came up to them and also looked in his eyes. So why can't it be you? You are a pro hero and you won't necessarily be away from her for too long as a student. Remember, you already have multiple degrees, the only thing that you'll need to do at UA is the hero course and then you can leave for the day. Any advanced students can do that so long as they pass the third-year written final exam. You'll only be away from her for around an hour, probably less. Daigoro said while speaking softly. To adopt her. She'd be much better in someone else's care. Izuku said sternly, though his face was twitching. Izuku, we all can tell that you are afraid. You think that if you are family to anyone else again, they will turn on you and will abandon you. That is why you haven't had a single friend in all these years till 𝗵𝗃𝗧𝗟𝗏. Hinagara said while looking at him with a kind look. Though Izuku immediately snapped at her. No, I know that she will. And 𝗵𝗃𝗧𝗟𝗏 isn't a friend. At most I just hate her the least because she reminds me of myself. Izuku said, glaring slightly at her. Izuku, you aren't thinking rationally. Do you really want to be controlled by your past? Do you want All Might and your tormentors to stop you from having a family? En said as his face was unreadable. Izuku glared at him and opened his mouth but closed it a few times before he glared at the ground. And was right. He had avoided having relationships for the past 8 years. He gave up on having relationships after 2 years of being diagnosed as quirkless. Even when he moved to an entirely different country, he never once truly spoke with anyone. Even when he sometimes traveled to his college and grad school, he never once tried to establish a relationship with anyone that surpassed acquaintances. The only people that he viewed as friends were the past users of 𝗳𝗧𝗧𝗟, though he never thought of them as his friends. They were more of a family. Izuku, try and be a brother to her. I know that your life as a quirkless has shut you out, but we are worried. Your only family are people that have been dead that technically talk to you in your head. Not exactly something that most people call normal. You need friends and family outside of just us. Nana said while slightly tearing up out of worry. Izuku stared at the ground in thought of that. He really didn't think about that. He had been with the past users for a long time, 6 years, and they all taught him so much. They truly were his driving force in living, they reignited his drive to become a hero, and they all loved and cared for him unconditionally. He decided on the day that he met them that wouldn't need anybody else, but perhaps he was wrong. Fine, I'll take her in and try and open up. Izuku said softly and with slight shame. The past users all smiled at him and hugged him, and he still felt it even though he was inside of his mind. He sighed before hugging back and slowly started leaving the mindscape. Izuku snapped back into reality and saw Eri still crying, so he got on the ground and hugged her. Eri flinched and started shivering from the physical contact which caused Izuku to let go of her. Eri, I have an offer to you. Why not become my little sister? Izuku asked. Eri's eyes immediately lit up with hope and happiness, though it was quickly replaced with disbelief and sadness. And no. If you do, then I'll kill you. 𝗵𝗃𝗃. Just let me go back to him so why you don't die. Eri yelled while crying even more. Izuku narrowed his eyes at her, which caused her to stop crying, though funnily enough it didn't scare her. Instead of with her uncle's eyes that were always looking with anger or disappointment with her, Izuku had nothing but what seemed to be confidence and reassurance. Eri, I promise you this. I will never die from whoever this bird person is, and I won't let him take you away back to his hell. Whatever curse you have, I guess I'll just deal with it and take it in stride. And if that curse happens to involve death, then I guess it's a good thing that I'm practically immortal. Izuku said to her while smiling still. Eri, please become my little sister and let me take care of you. Izuku said to her while hugging her. This time though, she didn't shake at all. Someone wanted a cursed child like her. Something that everyone told her was impossible. And also, this might be your quirk, but I can improve it to where you can control it better. How about this? Let me help you in how to master your quirk, and you call me Big Brother. Izuku asked while still smiling. Eri though was now full-blown crying. Do you really think that I can master my cursed Q quirk? Eri shouted her question while bawling. With every fiber of my being. Izuku replied instantly without even any doubt. Eri, from this day forward, call me either Izuku or Big Brother. I'll help you with everything that you need, and be there for you. Izuku said while smiling brightly. Eri just kept crying before gripping onto him while crying into his shirt. Izuku smiled while picking her up and sitting on the couch. After she cried for a few more minutes, she passed out in his arms. Izuku chuckled before taking her to his bedroom and putting her in the covers, before he started leaving the room. He stopped when he heard Eri sniffling and turned around to see Eri shaking in her sleep and crying, meaning she was having a nightmare. Izuku stopped before he got into the bed and hugged her close to him. Eri began to clutch onto his shirt in her sleep, and Izuku saw that she started to stop shaking. He smiled at her before hugging her even close to him and slowly starting to fall asleep as well. The next day Izuku woke up at 7:23 a.m. and saw that Eri was still gripping onto him. He smiled at her before he separated himself from her and got up to go make some breakfast. He made some cereal with an apple for Eri while he had some waffles and some eggs. After a while, he went back to wake up Eri. He shook her a few times and watched as she woke up. At first, she looked almost afraid and bolted up, before she started trembling at something. She looked at Izuku and started crying again at just looking at him, so Izuku hugged her and watched as she started crying again. It's okay, I'm here. Your big brother is here. Izuku said calmly to her. After a while, she stopped crying and Izuku led her to come get their breakfast. After they ate, Eri seemed to be in a trance, so Izuku smiled at her and took her to the living room. Eri, is there something wrong? Izuku asked while he sat her down. No. It's just, what are you going to do with me? Eri said and asked while being afraid. Izuku smiled calmly before he answered. Remember, call me either Big Brother or Izuku. And first things first, I'm going to help you with your quirk. With that being said, I'm going to evolve it really quickly. Izuku then put his hand on her head before he activated All for All and evolved her quirk. He also got all the information about her quirk. It was called Rewind, and with it the person can turn back time of anything, living or non-living. However, it is linked to her emotions, and as such, if she's not in control of herself, then the quirk can go into overdrive and rewind someone or something to before they were born. So, Izuku evolved the quirk to be an emitter-type quirk and getting rid of the emotional control aspect. It did feel weird at first, evolving a quirk that was in the possession of someone else, but he got it down. Removing his hand from her head, he smiled at her before giving her another apple, though not after he took a bite out of it. She was confused at first before Izuku spoke to her. Eri, rewind this apple by 20 seconds. Izuku said while Eri, although worried, activated her quirk. Though only after Izuku walked away from her. She held the apple before she focused on rewinding it. Unlike all the other times, she actually could tell that it was reversing by 20 seconds. Now, she had an apple that had no bites taken out of it. She held the apple in her hands a little bit longer before she broke down crying once again. Izuku smiled again and hugged her close to him. See, whatever curse you may bring, it doesn't matter to me. Eri, will you be my little sister? Izuku asked. Wise. She replied while still crying. Same day as last chapter, after spending time with Eri, he put her in bed to take a nap, and said that if she ever needed him, to just say it out loud and he'll come back with teleportation. He then left and went to the Hero Committee in order to speak with the MDM president. Once he teleported to the outside of the room, he was immediately met with the sounds of angry voices talking inside, and instantly recognized the voices. It was his former family and friends. Quickly staying outside the room, he eavesdropped on the conversation. What do you mean you won't tell me where my baby boy is? 𝗵𝗃𝗃 yelled at the president. We have a right to know as his parents. Also, you had to have known about him for 6 years. How dare you? All Might yelled while glaring at her. From what he could feel in the vibrations, his former sister and friends were behind the parents as well. I told you already, he chose not to give his location to the committee since it is just an option. And as far as parents go, don't think I'm slow. I've known that you both neglected him from the get-go. And your daughter and her friends are to blame as well. The president yelled at the group as All Might and 𝗵𝗃𝗃 both looked even angrier. It doesn't matter what we did to him before. We demand an audience with him. Since you're the president, you have legal authority to summon Izuku here if you wanted to. We are top-ranking heroes. Surely you realize that we can have this amount of influence. All Might yelled at her. Absolutely not. Disaster is an international hero. Surely you've heard of what he's done in America. Tornado, you only have influence in Japan, and All Might only has influence in Japan and America, but Izuku Shimura has influence in America, Japan, and Russia to an extent after the nuclear incident. I'm sorry that you made such a stupid mistake that cost you all a loving family member and friend, but you have nobody to blame but yourselves. The president yelled back with a glare. All Might backed down slightly, but 𝗵𝗃𝗃 wasn't done yet. Please, I'm begging you, she said as she got on her hands and knees and bowed to her. Please let me see my baby boy and how much he's grown. I need my baby boy just as much as he needs me. We made so many mistakes and we have 10 years to make up for. Please allow us to at least start making it up to him. 𝗵𝗃𝗃 yelled while crying. The president still glared at them, though it softened lightly. 𝗵𝗃𝗃, even though I can summon him, he will still just not want to meet you. Also, I can't summon him at all, unless there's a raid or hero heist that requires his skill. Listen, if you want to meet him, then join UA's staff and you'll be able to at least teach him. Izuku only said that he'd go to UA in order to earn his hero license, even though he already has his own from both me and the Hero Committee president in America. I'd assumed that he'd take the entrance exam like everyone else and probably ace it. I'm sorry that you have to wait even longer, but it truly is the only way. Now if that is all, please leave. MDM president explained with a sigh at the end as the group all lighted up at that answer. Izuku wanting to go to UA confirms that he still wants to be a hero, and it gives both All Might and 𝗵𝗃𝗃 a great opportunity to teach him how to be a hero. All Might could still offer him OFA and he'd still get his answer on how he got those quirks. Izumi and her group were happy too, since they could all achieve their dream of becoming heroes together at UA like they planned when they were kids. The group left with some satisfaction, and Izuku teleported away just in time before they saw him. Waiting a good 10 minutes on a rooftop, he teleported back into the building and entered the office. He came face to face with MDM president with her face in her hands. I heard what you told my old family. I appreciate you standing up for me. I came here to ask for another favor. I want to adopt a child that I found and I need you to fill out the paperwork. Izuku said as the president sighed before getting some papers out of her desk and putting them in front of him. Just fill out the name, 𝗬𝗍𝗍, and send me a picture of her face. I'll do the rest. The president said as Izuku filled them out as she handed him her number. He thanked her before teleporting back home. He arrived to see that Eri was still in the bed and was looking at his notes. He smiled as Eri noticed him and ran up to hug him. It meant a lot more to him than most, since it was the first time someone greeted him when he got home since 10 years ago. Hello Eri, did you miss me? Izuku asked as he hugged her back. Yes. I was looking at the white squares on your walls, and I was wondering what they were. Eri asked with his head tilt. Izuku smiled at her before answering. Those are called paper, and the way I'm using them is called notes, meaning that I use the papers as a way to store and remember information. Izuku explained to her, though he didn't take into account that Eri didn't understand what he said. I don't get it. What is information? Eri asked innocently. Izuku chuckled to himself before he got a book from the living room and sat down with her. Eri, let's learn the alphabet together, he said as Eri sat in his lap and he read and explained it. Days later, Izuku had officially adopted Eri for the last 2 days, and they spent every second of the last 2 days together. Literally. It turned out that Eri suffered from constant nightmares, so Izuku held her close to him whenever they slept to calm her down and make sure that she wasn't afraid. She also had extreme anxiety from other people other than him, as shown when she almost had a panic attack when Izuku's apartment neighbor came by to offer him some welcoming presents. Luckily, Izuku heard that the neighbor was just trying to show hospitality, and that he didn't mean to scare Eri. He thanked his sensory quirks for that, otherwise he'd have already attacked the poor man out of pure and utter reflex, and he didn't think the man would still have 4 limbs if he acted on that reflex. She was also scared of everything that she didn't know, which was why yesterday, Izuku took her around Japan in order to familiarize her with things that most considered normal. He explained what the sky was, what ice cream was, what restaurants and stores were, and even bought her some clothes that fit her. She did, however, have an extreme amount of fear towards any and all birds. Even a tiny little baby chick was enough to almost cause her to cry. She also found a nice way to stick to Izuku. Quite literally. She'd grasp onto his back or ride on his shoulders so that she didn't have to walk or talk to people. Though all the people that saw them like that thought it was cute. Izuku also took it upon himself to teach her what every 6-year-old should know in school too. She had little trouble learning, especially when he gave her candy apples as a reward. She learned numbers and letters fairly easily, though he mostly taught her in his pocket dimension space, since time in there is a lot more than the time outside. Izuku did take pride in his level of education, as most people would participate in a war to get the education he could provide. Izuku was making dinner for him and Eri before he heard his grandmother talking inside of his head. Specifically about someone he had been avoiding talking to. Izuku, are you going to talk to 𝗵𝗃𝗧𝗟𝗘? She gave you her number and you haven't even texted her yet. It's not nice to keep a woman waiting. She asked and said with a teasing tone. Izuku stopped for a second and blushed at what his grandma had just said, but also felt slightly guilty at what he did. Sighing, he finished making dinner before he sat down with Eri and started talking to her. Eri, I have something I need to ask you. Do you think that you'd want to meet your big brother's friend? Izuku asked while treading carefully as he didn't want her to be afraid of 𝗵𝗃𝗧𝗟𝗘. Eri stopped eating before she looked at the floor for a bit. In all honesty, she didn't know if she wanted to know anyone other than Izuku. Okay, but see, can I ride on your back for it? Eri asked shyly. Izuku chuckled before nodding his head, causing Eri to smile. Okay then, I'm going to make a call really quickly. I'll be back in 1 second. Izuku said before he went to his room and took out his phone and the paper that had 𝗵𝗃𝗧𝗟𝗔𝗃𝗃 number written on it. He nervously entered in the numbers before he pressed call and waited for her to pick up. It was 7:14 p.m., so he doubted that she was in school, though he hoped that she wasn't busy at the moment. After a few rings, the phone picked up and he could tell it was the right number by her voice. Hello, who is this? 𝗵𝗃𝗧𝗟𝗘 said. It's me, Izuku Shimura, from 3 days ago. Izuku said nervously, as he was hoping she could overlook him avoiding her. That's great, I'll be sure to add this number under your name. What do you want to talk about? She asked excitedly, and he could practically feel the giddiness in her tone. I was wondering if you wanted to meet up and, hang out. It doesn't have to be anywhere special, just a place where we can talk and I can answer your questions. Izuku responded awkwardly. How about this tea place I know? It's right next to the ramen shop and called the Jasmine Dragon. After that, we can go to the park and talk about stuff. I'm free tomorrow at 5 p.m., is that good? 𝗵𝗃𝗧𝗟𝗘 listed off. Izuku wrote down the place she said and replied. Yeah, I'm free at that time. I'll answer all the questions that I can. I'll see you tomorrow. Izuku said. Okay, bye. 𝗵𝗃𝗧𝗟 said cheerfully before she hung up. Izuku put his phone down before blushing in realization. I just called a girl and asked her out. He thought in his head while the past users all chuckled at his expression. The next day, outside Jasmine Dragon, 4:57 p.m. Izuku stood outside of the tea shop with Eri grabbing onto his leg. This time he wasn't wearing his bartender getup, instead he wore a dark green shirt with black and red shoes. Eri wore a red dress and red skirt and had her hair in ponytails. Izuku waited until he saw 𝗵𝗃𝗧𝗟 coming towards him. She wore a black no-sleeve shirt that showed her curves, with a pearl necklace, dark blue jeans and a gray belt. Her hair was styled the same as when he first saw her. She was smiling ear to ear and was looking around for him, so he waved his hand at her, catching her attention. She ran up to Izuku and finally noticed the little girl right next to him. "Oh, hello there. What's your name? What's your quirk? Why do you have a horn? Are you friends with Izuku? Why are you scared of me?" 𝗵𝗃𝗧𝗟 asked though, pouting at the end as she noticed Eri backing away from her and hiding behind Izuku. "It's okay, she's got extreme anxiety, so it may take a second for her to get used to you. Her name is Eri Shimura, and as of 2 days ago, she became my legally adopted sister. Her quirk is Rewind, and it was semi-connected to the horn on her head, though after I evolved Rewind, it was only a leftover mutation. It's nice to see you again, 𝗵𝗃𝗧𝗟." Izuku answered the questions for Eri. 𝗵𝗃𝗧𝗟 lit up at such a quirk and remembered to ask questions about it later. "Shall we get some tea?" Izuku asked as 𝗵𝗃𝗧𝗟 nodded. And so, Izuku, 𝗵𝗃𝗧𝗟, and Eri all went inside to start the hangout. They were greeted by a slightly rotund man with a handsome gray beard and no hair on the top of his head. He wore a dull green long kimono with a dark brown obi. "Hello there, I'm Iroh, and I will be your waiter today. What can I get you to drink?" The now-known Iroh said and asked with a large smile. Eri whispered what she wanted to Izuku, and 𝗵𝗃𝗧𝗟 was looking at the menu before deciding. "I'll have the honey milk tea with black tea mixed in," 𝗵𝗃𝗧𝗟 said. "Eri will have green tea with some apple juice mixed in. And I'll have taro milk tea with cinnamon mixed in," Izuku said. Iroh smiled before leaving with their menus. While they waited, Izuku and 𝗵𝗃𝗧𝗟 talked about a lot of things. Mostly about heroes and quirks. Izuku realized that 𝗵𝗃𝗧𝗟's favorite hero was Ryukyu because she was fascinated by her dragon quirk and the way she used it. 𝗵𝗃𝗧𝗟 was surprised to know that Izuku's favorite hero was actually Eraserhead. He explained that he fought essentially quirkless and had the ability to stop quirks from working, which was incredible. He also admired the fact that he remains an underground pro-hero instead of one that takes the spotlight. Eri listened to their conversations and was slightly overwhelmed to see that two people could talk about so much that she didn't understand. 𝗵𝗃𝗧𝗟 did include Eri on some conversations, though she was never the one to talk, it was always Izuku. 𝗵𝗃𝗧𝗟 learned that Eri loved apples and candy apples, along with loving and riding on Izuku, which she called adorable. Once their tea arrived, they talked a lot more about some other things. Izuku learned that she was a second year attending UA and that she was a part of the newly assembled Big Three. She had also been interning with Ryukyu since her very first internship. 𝗵𝗃𝗧𝗟 learned that Izuku lived in America and had 15 PhDs, along with a hobby in music and martial arts. She was blown away by how smart he was and the knowledge he had. She also learned that Izuku joined Hayashi's company when he was 14 years old, and was working here to establish international business in Japan. Once the group had finished their drinks, they walked out of the restaurant and made their way to the park. Though 𝗵𝗃𝗧𝗟 immediately commented on how adorable Eri was while riding on Izuku's shoulders, causing both of them to blush. Once they made it to the park, they all sat down at a bench, with Eri sitting on Izuku's lap and 𝗵𝗃𝗧𝗟 to the left of him. "So Izuku, how'd you become Disaster exactly?" 𝗵𝗃𝗧𝗟 asked. It was a question she had in the back of her mind since she learned he was younger than her. Izuku frowned and almost decided against telling her, until the past users all reassured him to open up about it. "In my original family, I wasn't wanted there. My quirk, All for All, hadn't awakened yet, and laid dormant in my body, to the point that the doctor labeled me as quirkless. From that day forward, I was neglected by my parents and abused by my own sister and my former friends. Once I turned 10, I decided to run away, but my quirk had awakened, causing me to copy my father's quirk. I ran away to America as an illegal immigrant, though I got legalized after my first year there. I also became a small vigilante there for a while. After that, I met up with the Hero Committee president in America, and he granted me my hero license despite my young age. When Japan's Hero Committee president caught wind of it, she also granted me my license, making me an international pro-hero. That was how disaster was born. Izuku explained as he looked at the ground. Eri and 𝗵𝗃𝗧𝗏 both looked at him concerned. Eri had known him for 3 days and just now he talks about his past, and was saddened that her big brother had such a life. 𝗵𝗃𝗧𝗏 was sad too, since a man that had done so much for the world like Izuku ended up having a terrible past. I'm sorry your life was like that. But look on the bright side. You've got an amazing and adorable little sister, you have arguably the strongest quirk in the world, which is irony at its finest, and you accomplished your dream of becoming a pro-hero. Not only that, but you are almost certain to become the #1 hero with your quirk, and you'll have no problem making friends thanks to your quirks. You'll have it much easier than I did in my years in UA. 𝗵𝗃𝗧𝗏 said brightly, though she saddened slightly at the end. What do you mean? Your quirk is quite powerful as it is. If you finished training with it, you'd make it to the top 10 of the hero chart in just 3 years. How'd you have it rough? Izuku asked curiously. He could tell she wasn't lying as her tone and body language both told him all he needed to know. Well, when I first entered UA, my quirk wasn't nearly as trained as it is now, and not even 1/10 of how powerful it is now. I barely passed the entrance exam by 1 point, and it was only due to my rescue points. At the sports festival, I passed the first and second round, but that was only due to my friends, and I was knocked out easily in the 3rd round when I was on my own. My 2 friends were in the exact same boat as me. Mirio couldn't control his quirk and it would cause scars to go on his body, and Tamaki suffers from severe anxiety and his quirk only allowed him to transform one of his body parts into an animal. In a way, that's what caused all of us to become friends. We all struggled with our quirks and were labeled as weak or useless heroes. Now that we're the big 3, it seems as if though everyone at UA just up and forgot about what we were before. 𝗵𝗃𝗧𝗏 explained while looking down. Izuku's eyes widened in realization and astonishment. She was just like him, someone who people barely recognized that became strong thanks to their efforts. Izuku suddenly started smiling at her before he patted her on her head and rubbing it, causing 𝗵𝗃𝗧𝗏 to blush at the contact. Eri was confused as well, as she didn't know why her big brother put his hand on someone's head. I guess that makes you and I the same as well. We were both outcasts until we became strong. Now that is an amazing twist of fate. Izuku said as he chuckled softly and laughed to himself. 𝗵𝗃𝗧𝗏 smiled at the realization too before joining him in laughter. Eri was still confused. Hey 𝗵𝗃𝗧𝗏, will you let me meet your friends, this Mirio and Tamaki? Izuku asked after he stopped laughing. Sorry, but you'll have to wait until the start of school in 3 months. Mirio is living with his grandparents for the summer and Tamaki is visiting family in Kyoto as well. But don't worry, I'll tell them all about you, they'll love you. 𝗵𝗃𝗧𝗏 said with a smile. Alright then, how about this? Will you let me evolve your quirk? Izuku asked with a smile. Really, you'd do something that kind for someone you just met? 𝗵𝗃𝗧𝗏 asked, surprised that someone like him would go so far for her. Yes, I can tell by your tone that you truly wish to help people and aren't just a hero for fame or money. Additionally, you're in the same boat as me, so I'll help you and stick with you. Besides, if you misuse the quirk, then I'll just take your quirk away and give you a different one. Izuku said, and with a shrug at the end. Okay then, just make sure that you can do so without doing anything weird. 𝗵𝗃𝗧𝗏 said with a chuckle at the end. Izuku softly chuckled too before putting his hand on her head and evolving her quirk. Her quirk was wave motion, and the way it worked was it converted stamina into golden energy that released itself from her limbs as spirals. The speed of these spirals were low, but the power in them was impressive. He changed the energy aspect to double the stamina given into a reserve of energy that could be drawn upon. In other words, he made a pool of energy inside of her separate from her stamina energy to use instead. This would get rid of her drawback of draining her stamina. He also made the spirals able to travel as fast as sound in order to help her, while also making her able to control both the speed and power of the spirals separately, making her able to still maintain the control she had before. Izuku let his hand off her head before explaining what he changed. This only resulted in a massive hug and a blushing Izuku. Thank you, thank you, thank you. You're an amazing guy and you're an amazing friend. 𝗵𝗃𝗧𝗟 said while she used her quirk and felt the differences before and now. Izuku smiled at her and wondered if he should probably help her control it, as when he evolved his quirks it took a while for him to master them. Say 𝗵𝗃𝗧𝗟, wanna train with me while I set up some businesses in Japan and do some hero work with you? Izuku asked. Sure, and I'll pay for some tea and even some snacks too. But I get to hug and kiss Eri. She's just too cute. 𝗵𝗃𝗧𝗟 said while squealing and giggling. Eri looked at her confused until Izuku smiled down at her and explained it to her. Eri, would you have 𝗵𝗃𝗧𝗟 as your big sister? Izuku asked. Eri looked afraid for a second, but saw Izuku's expression and trusted him and nodded. She was met with a large, strong hug straight away. Rundown of the last 3 months. Over the last 3 months, Izuku could proudly feel that he was happier than he had ever been in the past 12 years. He loved Eri and treasured 𝗵𝗃𝗧𝗟 more so than his own life, something the past users all were proud of too, especially his grandmother. Over the last 3 months, Izuku taught Eri all the subject material until 1st grade, and he helped her get a friend. She wasn't right with it at first, since she was still terrified of people, but thanks to some counseling, a lot of therapy and confidence from both Izuku and 𝗵𝗃𝗧𝗟, she managed to make one friend and at least be around other people. She befriended a boy by the name of Ikoda, and he always wore a red hat and had black hair and black eyes. Izuku and 𝗵𝗃𝗧𝗟 also became quite good friends. They hung out a lot together and did lots of things in their free time. Mostly watching movies, seeing heroes and taking notes on their quirks, talking about heroes, and even going to the Jasmine Dragon store a lot, so much so that Izuku, 𝗵𝗃𝗧𝗟 and Eri all came by at least 3 times a week. They also familiarized themselves with their homes, as 𝗵𝗃𝗧𝗟 had been to Izuku's apartment multiple times and Izuku had visited the 𝗳𝗏 residence a lot as well. 𝗵𝗃𝗧𝗟's father was a mostly stay-at-home worker, but her mother was overseas in France in order to expand her internet business. 𝗵𝗃𝗧𝗟 and Eri also did a lot together, as 𝗵𝗃𝗧𝗟 would constantly show her videos of heroes and quirks and would always encourage her asking questions. They also found a favorite snack in the form of the candy apple. They spent a lot of time watching videos and reading about quirks that Eri found cool, especially about Izuku's quirks. Izuku and 𝗵𝗃𝗧𝗟 have also been doing hero work for a while every day. 𝗵𝗃𝗧𝗟 works as an intern at Ryukyu's agency since her first internship in her first year, so she's seen a few villain situations and has gotten plenty of experience. Izuku mostly handles cases solo, but he's not against teaming up temporarily with other heroes. Mostly he works with rescue and combat operations, and mostly prefers to stop accidents before they escalate or begin. That being said, he has teamed up on multiple occasions. Twice with 𝗳𝗏𝗧𝗏, thrice with Ryukyu, 7 times with Eraserhead, and 18 times with Hawks. Because of this, Hawks is one of the few people that Eri will let hug her. Hawks and Izuku hit it off as good friends when they both arrived at a crime scene at the same time and took out the villain while working together in almost perfect sync. Since then, they hang out a lot and patrol the same areas most of the time and have even paid for each other's dinner multiple times. Izuku finished setting up the businesses he had in Japan as well. Thanks to the commercials with Ryukyu and her hero agencies, the businesses that were previously small have now expanded greatly. They rake in large sums of money every week and improve life greatly. Izuku also finished setting up his own hero agency, known as the Disaster Hero Agency. It was a small building that served as his temporary base of operations in Japan, though it also had a lot of computers that Izuku used to legally tap into cameras all around Japan so that he could answer distress calls every time they arrived. Izuku also invested money into UA recently. He made a meeting with the principal of UA, Nizu, and talked about a certain number of things. Flashback: 2 weeks ago, UA High School. Izuku walked through the halls of UA after recently signing up for the UA entrance exam that would happen in 2 weeks. He was walking until he found the principal's office, since he needed a private conversation with Nizu. He opened the doors and was met with 𝗵𝗍 sitting on a couch with tea on the table in front of him. He turned to me and smiled, and I could tell that he was expecting me. "Ah, you finally made it. Fantastic. Please, sit down, we have much to discuss, Izuku Shimura," 𝗵𝗍 said, and Izuku immediately knew exactly why everyone knew exactly who 𝗵𝗍 was. He was terrifyingly smart, and that was probably an understatement. Thank you. I take it that you were expecting me?" Izuku asked as he sat down and picked a teacup and took a sip out of courtesy. "Indeed. After all, you are the son of 𝗵𝗃, and you even have his quirk. Not only that, but you are also the stepson of 𝗵𝗃 and the grandson of Nana Shimura, so it would only be natural that you'd speak to me," 𝗵𝗍 said, greatly impressing Izuku even more. Izuku smiled at the compliment before he filled 𝗵𝗍 in on a few things. "Actually, my quirk is 𝗵𝗃, and it is very similar to 𝗵𝗃. I can take, give, copy, combine, erase, destroy, and evolve quirks. I came to talk to you about funding UA and to ask you for a few, shall we call them, special conditions," Izuku said, causing 𝗵𝗍 to smile. "Now that's something that I didn't know, color me impressed. Very well, I shall listen to these conditions, so long as you give valid reasons that aren't lies. Believe me, I will find out if they are lies or not," 𝗵𝗍 said, still smiling. "Thank you very much. My conditions are these two. 1. I only attend the hero course class PRD. The reason for this is quite simple. I have already finished my education for all the other subjects of school. I'm sure you know how many degrees I have. 2. I ask to only be at UA for at most an hour. This is because I have adopted an emotionally and physically abused 6-year-old that is waiting for me even as we speak." Izuku listed off his requests. 𝗵𝗍 did nothing but smile. "Very well then, since you didn't lie to me and didn't ask for too much, I shall make it happen. However, I expect to be paid back for this in full. What can you do to make up for this?" 𝗵𝗍 asked while sipping for tea. "How about funding for all of the teachers and utilities of UA until I graduate? I can also offer all the business course and support course students chances to attend my own companies or send them to other companies. Another thing, I'll send UA 30 shipments of top-grade steel to use however you please, at no cost at all," Izuku said to 𝗵𝗍. This did surprise 𝗵𝗍, as that would be essentially a little less than $100 million of steel that was free. Not only that, but both business course students and support course students could go into companies where they could truly flourish and grow. Plus, with the utilities being paid for along with paying his staff's paychecks, that meant that he could easily focus on other projects that he had been putting off for the last 10 years. "Very well then, I look forward to you handling your end of the deal," 𝗵𝗍 said as he shook hands with Izuku. Flashback, and Izuku made sure to keep up his end of the deal, since he didn't want to be in debt to someone like 𝗵𝗍. He also needed to make sure he stayed on 𝗵𝗍's good side, since if he didn't, then he'd have someone who could blackmail the government into doing anything he wanted. He didn't want to think what 𝗵𝗍 could end up complicating with his life. Izuku also has been training both 𝗵𝗍𝗧𝗔 and 𝗵𝗃 in their newly evolved quirks to give them better practice with controlling it. 𝗵𝗃 could now utilize rewind on command without fear of it being activated out of nowhere. She also started to control how much she rewinded the objects, and can rewind objects up to 30 minutes before. 𝗵𝗍𝗧𝗔 learned to control the power, speed, and length of her spirals too. Her control over it was the same, though she did need some help with the speed of the spirals, along with growing her separate energy pool inside of her body. She improved dramatically and learned a lot more about her quirk. It showed too, because now at Ryukyu's agency, she was now the strongest under Ryukyu. Izuku also trained on his own a little bit, though only with getting his teleportation quirks spread out throughout Japan and training further with his swordsmanship and CQC. He started disabling his own quirks and using just his swords and bare hands and was surprised by the outcome. He could still cut cleanly through most rocks with little difficulty, and he had power in his punches. His reaction time was also naturally high, so much so that he could react to bullets. He started doing this once he learned a hero was shot with a mystery bullet that caused him to lose his quirk for 24 hours. Izuku wanted to be prepared in case it happened, And he also stored a vial of BLD that he gave a copy of All for All and all his other quirks inside of it as a contingency in case the drag bullet somehow improved to fully destroy quirks. Right now, Izuku had just gotten up and decided to head out. He gently got Eri up and explained where he would be going for a while. She said she understood, and Izuku made her some breakfast and set aside some snacks for later. He also changed into his usual suit and then kissed Eri goodbye before teleporting to UA. Once there, he made his way to the testing hall where he would be tested for the written portion. He saw a man who he knew was 𝗵𝗃𝗧 and asked him where to sit. He said the row closest to the window and near the back, and so Izuku did as he was told and stepped inside the room. He was met with a little less than 500 people staring at him. From the crowd, he could see that his tormentors were in the room as well, though they were spread out and weren't anywhere near his seat. He walked his way over and ignored the looks from his tormentors and sat down. After 5 minutes of waiting, the tests were handed out and he started. The test was a breeze for him and didn't have any material that he didn't memorize. It didn't take much time either, since he had only 55 questions. He completed the test in about 25 minutes before he handed it in and left for the auditorium. He learned which seat was his from 𝗵𝗃𝗃 and was told there was 40 minutes before he needed to be in his seat. He nodded and set a teleportation mark on his seat before he teleported back to his house. He stayed with Eri there for about 35 minutes and told her how he was doing and just hanging out with her, along with reading to her. Once 35 minutes had passed, he bid farewell to Eri again and left back to the teleportation mark back at his seat. He arrived there and was met with scaring the people around his seat, especially the red-haired boy and pink-haired girl by his sides. Once they calmed down, Izuku spoke softly. "Sorry for scaring you. My name is Izuku Shimura. Nice to meet you," he said as the two calmed down. "I'm Ijiro Kirishima." "Nice to meet you, bro," the red-haired boy said while grinning and showing his sharp teeth. "I'm Mina Ishido. Nice to meet you too," the pink-haired girl said while grinning. After waiting for a second, 𝗵𝗃𝗃 entered and stood on the podium in order to give instructions. "Hello there everybody. My name is 𝗵𝗃𝗃, and I'll be the one giving you your instructions for the practical exam. There will be 3 main types of robots, 1 points, 2 points, and 3 points. They give you the points if you can destroy or disable them, but you'll only have 10 minutes to do so. You'll be sent out to one of 5 cities, and then the test will begin. Excuse me, 𝗵𝗃𝗃 explained before he was interrupted by a rather loud individual. The boy had blue hair in a slick haircut and wore a blue uniform along with glasses. "You claim that there are 3 types of robots, and yet this pamphlet states that there is actually 4. If UA is such a prestigious school, then it should be ashamed of itself for making such a critical error. And you?" the boy said before pointing his finger accusingly at Izuku, who only sighed in annoyance, as now his tormentors were also looking at him. "Why are you slouching and all relaxed? And why did you arrive in your seat by using a quirk? If you're not going to show up on time the correct way, much less take this seriously, then leave. UA is not a place for people like you," he shouted at Izuku. Izuku sighed before speaking a few words. "You done? You're the one who interrupted 𝗵𝗃𝗃. He was about to explain the 0 pointers. "And you are the one not taking this seriously, because you think that you can interrupt teachers at UA, teacher, mind you, that can expel you anytime they feel like it. You do not have even an ounce of respect for them, and if you do, then you do a terrible job of showing it," Izuku said with his eyes closed, and he could hear everybody in the auditorium whispering. "Thank you, little listener. As I was saying, there will also be a 0-point robot, and it gives you 0 points. It's simply put there to serve as a trap or an annoying obstacle that is better to avoid. With that being said, are you ready?" 𝗵𝗃𝗃 finished the instructions. Minutes later, City C. After a ride on a bus, Izuku stepped out of it to be met with a ginormous city surrounded by an even larger city wall. After waiting patiently, he noticed that the gates were about to open up, so he decided to run through them as soon as they opened. He also could feel the gaze of his former sister being on him and him alone. Same time, observation room. Most of the staff of UA was there inside of the room, including the new staff members, All Might, Green Tornado and Endeavor, who joined the staff in order to help his children become his successors. They were all watching the screens when the doors opened and two people walked in. They were Shoka and Shoto Todoroki, the children of 𝗵𝗲𝗏. "Sorry kids, but you can't be in here," 𝗵𝗃 said before 𝗵𝗲𝗏 stood in front of him. "They are my children, and I allowed them to be here so that they could learn from other examinees. They won't cause you or anyone any trouble." 𝗵𝗏𝗏 spoke menacingly to him. "Dad, Mom, Izuku, he's here," Shoka said while watching All Might and Inko both turn to her. "What city is he in?" All Might asked 𝗍𝗎. "I assume you're talking about Izuku Shimura, correct? He's in City C, along with Izumi Yagi. Why do you want to know about him?" 𝗍𝗎 asked while smiling as he wanted to be entertained. "Sir, that is my son. He's been missing for 6 years. And his name isn't Izuku Shimura, it's Izuku Yagi." All Might yelled at him. Well, according to this file, he legally changed his identity from Izuku Yagi to Izuku Shimura, along with having you and Inko losing any and all guardianship over him. He's no longer your son legally. 𝗍𝗎 replied while sipping tea and smirking. "But 𝗍𝗎, he's my baby boy. I gave 𝗵𝗲𝗏 to him and he's my child. Surely you can see that?" Inko shouted at him. "Perhaps, but on paper and in the eyes of the law, he is no longer your son. Any and all legal documents concerning Izuku Yagi are therefore null and void, and the only way you could have him as your son again is if he legally accepts it with a signature. Good luck with that," 𝗍𝗎 said while laughing to himself. "Regardless, this will be a great opportunity to see if Izuku is worthy of marrying you, Shoka. I hope you weren't thinking of lying about your son having a quirk, All Might," 𝗵𝗲𝗏 said while glaring at All Might. "He's right, it will be a good opportunity to see just how many quirks Izuku has. Izuku, please tell me it isn't too late to save you from All for One." All Might thought to himself. "Dad, Izuku has a very powerful quirk. He's been a hero ever since he was 10 years old. Meaning that he is more than worthy of marrying Shoka," Shoto said while glaring at 𝗵𝗲𝗏. He did not want his sister's happiness to be ruined over something as meaningless as a quirk being strong. "Can we at least speak to Izuku after the exams?" Inko asked while crying. "Not unless Izuku agrees to it, so maybe," 𝗍𝗎𝗏 said. "Mom, it's okay. I'll talk to Izuku with Katsumi and we'll convince him to be with us, and we'll convince him to come home. It means nothing if he isn't legally engaged with us, we'll just have him become Izuku Yagi again. Don't worry, we'll make things go back to way they used to be," Shoka said while getting Inko to smile again. Back in City C, Izuku had his eyes closed when he sensed that the gates were about to open. He summoned a katana in his hand and readied himself to fight and move. The second the gates opened, Izuku bursted forward at the speed of sound and immediately took out 2 clusters of robots. "Hey, you'll be expelled for starting early. Get back here, you cretin!" The blue-haired boy shouted at him in anger. "Hey, follow that green-haired kid. There is no countdown in real life. Go, go, go." Present Mike shouted from atop a building. Immediately, everyone there ran in to try and catch up. Unfortunately for them, there was barely any robots left behind from Izuku's carnage. In the observation room, everyone there was shocked at what Izuku had done. He showcased nothing more than a weapon creation quirk and at the very least a speed and strength enhancing quirk. "That's your son, All Might. I'm impressed." He showcased at least 2 quirks, though as expected of the son of the #1 hero. 𝗵𝗃𝗏 said. "He has a teleportation quirk, a strength quirk, a speed quirk, a wind quirk, an energy quirk, and now a weapon quirk. That is quite the deadly combination." Recovery Girl commented. "Ha, you were right, All Might. That is quite the quirk Izuku has. It seems to allow him to access to superhuman strength and speed while also allowing him to summon weapons and control elements. I expect him to be married to Shoka by the end of the month." 𝗵𝗏𝗏 shouted while grinning widely. His grandkids would be unstoppable with his son-in-law's quirk mixed with his daughter's. Shoka was also smiling, as now her father finally fully agreed to have Izuku as her husband. Back with Izuku felt a shiver go down his spine for some reason but ignored it and decided to keep fighting. He took out 2 clusters of robots at once with his Divine Flame quirk and his Maelstrom quirk at the same time. He took out 4 clusters of robots at once by using his sword and just continued his rampage. Izumi was watching him, or at least trying to. She made points by crushing the robots with her mind on the inside. She'd fry the computer's inside and have it fall down on its own. She kept this up while also saving some of the other examinees while still trying to watch her elder brother. In the city B, Katsuki and Katsumi were both fighting their way through robots mostly by just blasting right through them and moving on to the next one. With Nizu, enough time has passed, time for the 0-pointer. Nizu yelled as he pushed a big red button. Back with Izuku after Izuku started finishing off some more robots, he felt the ground tremble slightly and looked to where he felt it. He saw a ginormous robot coming up from the ground and saw it knocking over some buildings. Izuku sped off towards it because he heard a cry for help and saw that a girl was trapped under some rubble. Izuku teleported to a mark he conveniently left near the building and lifted the rubble that was trapping the girl who cried for help. She had brown hair and brown eyes and a permanent blush on her round cheeks. Izuku picked her up before teleporting her to the entrance and teleporting back. Once he made sure that there was nobody else nearby, Izuku activated Divine Flame, Maelstrom, and Tornado and surrounded his blade with all 3 elements. He activated armament around the blade as well before he swung his sword. It launched a blade of pure fire, wind and lightning that cut the entire robot and exploded it, causing the 0-pointer to crash down into a building. Izuku teleported back onto the ground and was going to go destroy some more robots, until a massive alarm stopped him. The exam time limit has been reached. This test is over. Present Mike screamed throughout the city. In the observation room, Shoka, be sure to marry him by the end of the week. Someone of his strength would be perfect for you. Endeavor said with a slightly deranged smile. Shoka smiled too, since that would mean that she'd have both of her father's approval in marriage and could marry the love of her life with Katsumi. Nizu, please call Izuku to the observation room. Inko said as Nizu turned around while still sipping tea. No, you see, I can't because he is needed back at his house right about now. Nizu said calmly with a smile. Wait, you know where his house is? And just who is at his house? Inko said, wondering where her baby boy was and also about if he had a girl at home. If he did have a girl back at home, then she would need to get out of his house as fast as possible. Nizu, I'm going to confront my son. I'll be back in a second with Izuku, okay Inko? All Might said as he rushed out the room to go bring back Izuku. With Izuku, after making sure that everybody was okay and not hurt, he left the city by teleporting back to his house. He was met with Eri and 𝗵𝗃𝗃 playing checkers. Eri ran up to hug his leg and smiled widely at him, returning without any injury. 𝗵𝗃𝗃 got up and went over to him before hugging him too. So how's your due on the entrance exam? You aced it, right? 𝗵𝗃𝗃 said with a smile while jumping on her heels. Yep, both the written and practical exam were mere pushovers. I assume you knocked on the door and Eri let you in. Izuku asked, slightly surprised at 𝗵𝗃𝗃 being at his house. Of course. I'm not going to break into your house. Are you not happy to see me? She said with an angry pout at the end. Of course not, I was just surprised that you were here. You want to watch a movie with me and Eri? Izuku explained and asked. 𝗵𝗃𝗃 smiled before jumping onto the couch in his living room and turning on the TV. Izuku smiled at her before picking Eri up and going to the couch. He sat down and watched as she picked a movie, which was some random hero movie. Izuku held Eri close to him and laid her on his lap, while 𝗵𝗃𝗃 was at his left. After about 20 minutes into the movie, 𝗵𝗃𝗃 laid her head onto Izuku's shoulder. They stayed like that throughout the entirety of the movie, and they fell asleep like that afterward. Weeks later, Monday, Izuku and 𝗵𝗃𝗃 stood side by side outside of UA. Izuku would only be here for around 1 hour and then leave to go back to Eri, but 𝗵𝗃𝗃 would be here for at least 8 hours. Izuku was wearing now the school uniform instead of his normal outfit, though he created it using appearance change to make it comfy on the inside. Okay Izuku, I'll see you after school. After you want to patrol together and get some Jasmine Dragon? 𝗵𝗃𝗃 asked excitedly. Sure, I'll patrol and hang out with Eri after my heroic class is up, but at 4:30 I'll pick you up and we'll go to Jasmine Dragon together with Eri. I'll see you later. Izuku replied and bid farewell. He walked through the hallway until he found classroom 1A. He set a teleportation mark outside of the classroom before he walked inside. He was met with two people arguing. Get your feet off of the desk. Our previous senpais used these very desks, and it's an appall that you would dirty them with your filthy shoes. The blue-haired boy shouted at a sandy blonde-haired boy that Izuku recognized immediately. Did someone put a stick up your butt? What school did you come from? Katsuki yelled back at him. What vulgar language? I'm 𝗳𝗍𝗧𝗍 from Semi Middle School. The now-known 𝗳𝗍𝗧𝗍 shouted his name in school. Huh. A boy from a private school, huh? It'll be fun to crush an elite like you. Katsuki yelled while smirking. Crush me? Are you sure you are here to become a hero? Ida shouted back. Katsuki, stop. He's not worth it. Izumi shouted at him. Sis is right, brother. Calm down. Katsumi said to him calmly. Shoto and Shoka were sitting near them, mostly just watching the scene before them. Most of the other students in the class also were watching the scene before them. Ida was about to shout at Katsuki some more until he noticed Izuku standing in the doorway. He marched over to him and spoke a few words that annoyed Izuku. What is a cretin like you doing here? You showed up the latest out of all of us, and you also spoke very rudely to present Mike and myself at the entrance exam. Apologize immediately. Ida shouted at Izuku, who sighed tiredly. Listen, Karen, you were the one that acted out of order when you interrupted Present Mike and chose to make a big deal about how I came into the auditorium. Not only that, but we still have like 3 minutes till class begins, meaning I'm not late at all yet. I'm not apologizing for anything, you but. Izuku explained calmly as everyone in the class held their laughter. WIUL little troublemaker. Ida screamed as he charged Izuku with a kick. Izuku calmly responded by grabbing his leg and flipping him over his body and onto the ground. The force of the flip was great, as it caused a web of cracks to appear on the floor. After that happened, Izuku walked calmly over to a seat that was empty and sat down. And after ignoring the people in the room, especially his previous sister and friends, for about 4 minutes, the teacher finally came into the room. Izuku recognized him as Eraserhead, though everybody else didn't know who he was. Everyone saw what looked like a yellow human caterpillar crawl into the room, confusing everybody other than Izuku. He crawled to the front of the room before he showed that he was a normal human with long shaggy black hair and tired black eyes. He wore a black jumpsuit with yellow goggles on and a white scarf. I'm your sensei for the next 3 years, Shoto Aizawa. Head to the locker rooms and put on the gym outfit, then head out to the courtyard. Aizawa said before leaving both the confused class and the classroom. Izuku sighed before getting up and teleporting to the courtyard and using appearance change to 𝗬𝗍𝗧𝗍 into the UA gym uniform. After waiting for 7 minutes, everyone in the class arrived, including a slightly injured Ida. Izuku also sensed that All Might and 𝗵𝗃𝗃 were both watching him from behind a wall. Today, you'll be doing a quirk apprehension test. We don't waste time with something as stupid as orientation. You all will do push-ups, sit-ups, seated toe touches, 50-meter dash, grip strength, distance run, standing long jump, and ball throw. You will use your quirks. Izuku Shimura, since you scored first place in the entrance exam and scored higher in the written and practical than ever before, you will do the ball throw first. Aizawa said tiredly as he gave the ball to Izuku. Izuku nodded before he activated his Tornado, Maelstrom, and Divine Flame quirk along with using his super strength to throw the ball as far as he could. It caused a lot of wind pressure that made everybody's hair blow and a web of cracks in the ground. The ball sped through the sky and broke through 3 clouds and disappeared in the distant sky. Aizawa looked at his distance device before smirking and showing it to the class. Here, we will push you all to your limits, Aizawa said while smirking. Infinity! Most of the class yelled. How did my husband get so strong? Shoka and Katsumi thought together while blushing at him being so strong. What quirks do you have, brother? Izumi, Katsuki and Shoto thought. Son/baby boy, did you really fall to AFO's side? All Might and 𝗵𝗃𝗃 thought while getting anxious. We get to use our quirks, this will be so much fun, Mina said while smiling. Aizawa reacted to this by adopting a SHT eating smirk and chuckling. Izuku sighed at what he knew Aizawa would say next. Fun. Fun, you say? All right then, last place shall be expelled immediately. 𝗧𝗏𝗧𝗔𝗍 said with his eyes glowing red from his quirk. Sir, you can't do that. That is unfair to all of us that worked hard to get here. 𝗳𝗍𝗧𝗏 said while gritting his teeth. So what? Natural disasters, villain attacks, collateral damage, murder, robbery, and crime in general isn't fair. Heroes have to deal with all the unfairness in the world because that in it of itself is a hero's job. Now then, let's begin the tests. 𝗧𝗏𝗧𝗏 spoke while giving the students the next tests. 𝗵𝗃 Izuku was up against 𝗳𝗍𝗧, who was glaring at him with rage. Once the robot sounded the start, Izuku just used his teleportation to arrive at the finish line. Izuku. 0.0000001 seconds 𝗳𝗍𝗧. 4. 3 seconds, how? You have to be cheating. 𝗳𝗍𝗧 shouted at Izuku. I used my teleportation quirk. By your logic, you cheated by using a speed quirk. Deal with it. Izuku said without even looking at 𝗳𝗍𝗧, him off slightly. Push-ups. Izuku just did non-stop push-ups as fast as he could as a robot counted him doing so. To everyone else though, it looked as if though Izuku was a blur. He did this for 5 minutes straight. Izuku, 2,473 push-ups sit-ups again. Izuku moved as a blur while a robot counted his amount. Izuku, 2,568 sit-ups grip strength, wow bro, you're really strong. Ijiro said while looking at Shoji's score, which was 560 kilograms. All of a sudden, everybody heard a loud crunch and turned to Izuku with a broken device. 𝗧𝗏𝗧𝗏 sighed before writing on the clipboard. That was a device that could withstand 1 million kilograms of pressure too. Oh well. 𝗧𝗏𝗧𝗏 said. Long distance jump. Izuku activated fly and just levitated over the sandbox, causing everybody to wonder what his quirk was. Distance run. Izuku just ran laps at the speed of sound around the track while going at a constant speed. He did so for about 30 minutes, and while everyone was grasping and trying to get their breath back, Izuku wasn't even sweating. Seated toe touch. Shoji actually tied with Izuku on this one, as he touched 5 inches past his toes, exactly the same as Izuku did. Results. Alright, here are the results. 𝗧𝗏𝗧𝗏 said while everybody got semi-nervous. Izuku Shimura Momo Yaoyorozu Shoka Todoroki Katsumi Bakugou Izumi Yagi Shoto Todoroki Katsuki Bakugou Tenya 𝗵𝗃𝗃 𝗃𝗃𝗃 Shoji Mashireo Ojiro Ijiro Kirishima Ashido Ochako Uraraka Kuji Koda Rikikido Sato Tsu Azui Yuga Aoyama Hantas Siro Denki Kaminari Kyoka Jiro Tora Hagakure Minor Mineta. Oh, by the way, I was lying about the expulsion. Go back to class. The syllabus is inside your desks. 𝗧𝗏𝗧𝗏 said offhandedly. Sir. I ask that Izuku Shimura is expelled from UA for not only injuring me, but also lack of respect to the staff. 𝗳𝗍𝗧𝗏 yelled while 𝗧𝗏𝗧𝗏 and Izuku sighed at the same time. Well, I guess I should deal with this now instead of later. 𝗳𝗍𝗧𝗏, drop this grudge you have against Izuku, or else you will be expelled. I was there when he injured you, and when you spoke out of turn at the entrance exam. If you bring this up again, consider yourself expelled and have peer bullying on your record. 𝗧𝗏𝗧𝗏 said without care in the world as he left the courtyard, leaving 𝗳𝗍𝗧𝗏 with his mouth open. The class then left back to class, though Izuku teleported and got his syllabus. He needed to stay for another 20 minutes until he can go back home, since he was only there for about 40 minutes. He used appearance change to have the UA uniform on again and decided to just relax for the rest of class. After a while, the class came back and Izuku decided to talk to Ijiro and Mina, since he found them to be very nice and chill. He learned that Ijiro and him both shared an obsession with working out and martial arts, while he and Mina both appreciated music and dance. Mina actually does professional dance, while Izuku just likes watching dance videos, so he asked her for some lessons on dance, to which she agreed. He also offered giving Ijiro his workout routine if he wanted it. Izuku was talking to them some more, when a hand was reaching for his shoulder, and Izuku noticed and grabbed the hand. It was 𝗳𝗍𝗧𝗏 again. What do you want now? Izuku asked, already tired of him. Why is it that you can use your quirk freely? Why do you seem familiar enough with UA to get away from normal punishments? 𝗳𝗍𝗧𝗏 asked while glaring at him. I've been a pro hero since I was 10 years old. My hero name is Disaster, and I've teamed up with Izuku on multiple occasions. His hero name is Eraserhead. Izuku explained while growing annoyed. How the hell were you a hero since you were 10? And why the hell can you be so much ahead of us? Ida asked again. Unfairness. You'd be surprised by what quirkless people go through. Let me paint a picture for you. You are 4 years old, you have no quirk, your friends and even your sister bully you, beat you up, and stomp and discourage even trying to reach your dream, your parents don't even remember you, and every day you go back to a basement to clean your wounds of BLD and infections. Repeat this process for 6 years until you finally get a quirk. This world isn't even remotely fair. It will kick your butt into the ground and spit on you for even thinking of hitting back. It will do this until either you roll with the punches or until it breaks you. You have a loving family, a great future, and a good quirk, and you have a decent idea of what you need to do with it considering you are trying to be a hero. So why the hell are you complaining about something that I do? Izuku explained and asked. The entire class listened in and flinched slightly at the fake scenario that Izuku painted out for them. Izumi and her friends on the other hand were all feeling guilty again, so did all Might and Inko who were outside of the classroom. Listen Ida, you need to hear this. Shut up about fairness or rules. Don't ask questions until they have fully explained things, and don't think of interrupting people until they have said their piece. Also, don't expect people to help you. You need to stand by yourself if you want to survive in this world. Izuku continued to speak. After that though, he got up and left towards the door. I have to go take a leak. See ya. Izuku said. Izumi and her friends then excused themselves and left to go after Izuku, leaving a very confused class. With Izuku was walking and trying to find a restroom until he came across 2 people he honestly never wanted to even hear about again. Toshinori Yagi and Inko Yagi, his former parents. The 3 of them just stood still for a couple of seconds and took a few moments just to fully register each other and the differences from 6 years ago. All Might and Inko both noted that Izuku grew a lot taller and more muscular than they were expecting. He still had slightly bushy green and black hair, though it was longer than they remembered. Inko also noticed that Izuku grew very handsome over the years and was excited for him to marry Katsumi and Shoka. Izuku also saw some big differences. All Might in his skinny form now looked more like a shrunken corpse than he did a normal human. He even shrunk a little to be just barely taller than Izuku. Inko looked to be shorter than him as well, and she had put on slightly more weight than he remembered, though was still quite thin. Izuku was the first to fully register the 2, so he spoke first. What do you 2 want? Make it quick. Izuku said as he started walking past them. All Might entered his buff form and put his hand out to grasp Izuku's shoulder, but Izuku grabbed hold of his hand and started applying a lot of pressure. Inko just watched from the side at the scene. If you value this arm, and even more so your life, then you will not even think of putting your hand on my body, Izuku said with an emotionless tone. All Might gained a pained look, both emotional and physical, before nodding and pulling his arm back and out of Izuku's grasp. If all you want to do is stare, then I'm going, Izuku said before walking fully past them. 𝗬𝗏𝗧𝗟𝗃. All we want to do is ask you where you've been and what you've been doing. Inko suddenly said while reaching out to him. Izuku stopped before turning back to them and still had an emotionless and unreadable expression. I'm not in any position to tell either of you what I've done or where I've been, but if you want to know so bad, then fine. I was in America getting both an education and becoming a hero. Izuku said simply. All Might and Inko were both surprised about that. Getting an education in America is something that not many in Japan can brag about. Becoming a hero there is also very hard nowadays. 𝗬𝗏𝗃𝗃, it's Shimura to you both? All Might tried to say before being cut off from Izuku. Fine. Shimura, where did you get the quirks you have? And don't lie to me, this is serious. All Might said feeling weird calling his son Shimura. If you think I went to All for One, then you are wrong. Inko probably remembers Hisashi Midoriya, right? Well, that was just a cover name, and yes, I'm actually his biological son, not your biological son. Hisashi is actually All for One using a disguise quirk, meaning I'm the biological son of All for One, Japan's worst villain. My quirk is All for All, a quirk that can take give, use, copy, evolve, disable and destroy quirks. Izuku explained as All Might stopped breathing for a moment. 𝗵𝗃 was disturbed at the fact that Izuku knew who his actual father was, and wondered how he found out about it. Izuku took some satisfaction in seeing All Might's heartbroken face from learning his wife used to be with All for One before him. Also, I haven't taken any quirks yet, I've only copied quirks from others. Izuku said, slightly calming 𝗵𝗃. Shimura, can you come home with us please? 𝗵𝗃 said while almost crying at the thought of having Izuku back inside of her house after all of these years. No. Izuku said almost instantly as he continued walking away from them. Wait. All Might yelled in his buff form and scaring 𝗵𝗃. It doesn't matter that you have his genes in you. You are my son and my family. Izuku, please come back home with us. All Might said while looking straight at Izuku. Izuku was slightly surprised from All Might's words. He expected him to either lash out or stupidly claim that he was false. That or attack him in the worst scenario. However, at the end of the day, Izuku didn't even care in the slightest. No. I told you to refer to me as Shimura, did I not? Besides, I have a little sister waiting for me back at home. Izuku said as he began walking away again. Then come home to me, big brother? Izumi said as she arrived with her group of friends, standing in front of Izuku. Izuku sensed them the second they all left the classroom and knew they were coming after him, but he didn't do anything about it. He could have avoided the entire encounter, but he decided to confront them now, rather than later. You are Izuku Yagi's little sister. I'm Izuku Shimura. Don't get it mixed up. I don't consider you my sister, and I'm not even your sister by legal documentation, so don't call me that. The only sister that I have is Eri Shimura. Izuku said while walking past the group. Though Shoka stood in front of him and blocking his path. This was awkward for Izuku, considering that he was face to face with his first crush. He saw that the group all grew up quite a bit, and seemed to be much stronger and much more different than what they were when they were 10. Still, he'd be lying if he said that he enjoyed seeing her again. He wanted to be in any other place than even near Shoka. What do you want, Todoroki? Izuku asked coldly, rather than emotionlessly to Shoka, hurting her greatly. I wanted to see how my fiancé was doing. Shoka said, getting over the coldness Izuku semi-quickly. Izuku merely raised an eyebrow at her remark before turning to Shoto. Is she on LSD? Izuku asked with a straight face, uncaringly hurting Shoka's feelings even more. The group was saddened by the fact that Izuku truly reacted this way towards them, but Shoto answered nonetheless. No, brother. You actually are legally engaged to Shoka since we got your father and mother's written agreement. Shoto said while everyone was nervous about Izuku's reaction, especially Katsumi and Shoka. Even if Izuku Yagi is engaged to them, Izuku Shimura isn't. Meaning that your sister is going to marry a dead man. Have fun with that. Izuku said while now having a slightly amused expression. That isn't how it works, brother. Please make this easy on us and come home. Katsuki said while looking pained at what Izuku said. Actually, that is how it works. I'm a pro hero, which means I have a legal ability to change my identity and thus change all legal documentations about me, such as arranged marriages and other such things. I'm not marrying Shoka. End of discussion. Izuku said while having a blank face. But, please Izuku, I'm begging you, come be with me and Shoka. Just give us a chance. I'm sure you can accept us and learn to love us with time. We can take away all your hatred toward us and all your pain. So please just come back to me and Shoka. Katsumi said while in tears at the fact that she had to get Izuku to change his name back. Never. I won't let myself trust any of you ever again. I can't believe that I had family and friends like you, people who judged me on something that I had no control over whatsoever. You won't take away my pain, and you'll never take away my resentment towards you. Izuku said with an even colder voice than before, causing Katsumi and Shoka to start crying uncontrollably. Besides, how could I ever fall in love for either of you, people that hurt and bullied me for something as small and meaningless as a quirk? Don't even think for 1 second that I'd ever accept either of you as my wife. Izuku said even harsher, causing Katsumi and Shoka to break down in tears and start whimpering. Brother. That was uncalled for. Apologize now. Katsuki yelled at Izuku while hurt that his sister was crying because of the boy she fell in love with. I'll never apologize to bullies. Actually, I will apologize. I'm sorry that you have to deal with the consequences of your actions and have to find someone else to marry and cope with the guilt that you have inside of you. Izuku said while smiling sickly at the pained faces his former friends and family gave him. Son, you will come back home right this instant. You will take these lovely ladies as your wives and you will leave this airy person you mentioned before. Is that clear? All Might yelled at Izuku while angry at his son's tone towards his future wives. All Might's sentence was refuted by Izuku using his fighting spirit quirk to release a lot of pressure on the group's bodies. Shoto and Katsuki both fell to their knees while Izumi struggled to stand straight on wobbly legs, and Shoka and Katsumi were both shivering. Inko was holding up by putting her hands on the wall, and All Might was sweating massively from the pressure. This killing intent, it's the same as his. All Might thought to himself nervously while clutching old wound. Izuku chuckled at the reactions he got from the group, before turning his back to all of them. Before you demand anything from me, get on my level first, and don't even think of trying to legally adopt me again, as it would need my signature to do so. Something that none of you have. Izuku said with his back still turned. And with those final words spoken, Izuku teleported away from all of them, going back home. Back at the apartment, Izuku arrived back to his apartment and was already exhausted. Just being near his tormentors took a lot out of him. He was hugged by Eri after a second and she wrapped his leg in a hug. Izuku calmed down a little and kneeled down to hug her back. I'm just fine, I was only gone for an hour. Later, we're going to Jasmine tea with 𝗵𝗃𝗧𝗟𝗘. I'll hang out with you for a while before I head out. I'll come back to check on you once every 30 minutes, okay? Izuku said as Eri nodded. With that said, Izuku and Eri went to the living room to play some games and watch a show.